Chapter 81. Pure Insanity. Roaring thunder, shouted Lin Feng. He then thrust his sword towards Lei Bo. The sword force which he unleashed started to combine with thunderous roars in the atmosphere. The atmosphere was being consumed by the immense power of the attack. In Lin Feng's hands, that yellow-level attack coupled with sword force was as powerful as a Zan-level skill. Roaring thunder was filling the atmosphere with an incredibly explosive force. Lei Bo's hands were still unleashing a powerful thunder chi. He had managed to block Lin Feng's roaring thunder, but he was sent flying backwards while groaning in pain. Lin Feng's sword force started to consume more energy and grow even more powerful. I give up. I do not want to fight anymore. Lei Bo shouted extremely loudly. He knew that he couldn't win against Lin Feng, and on top of that, he was already wounded from attempting to block the last strike. The 21st ranked elite disciple, who was at the third Ling Qi layer, suddenly wanted to give up when fighting against Lin Feng. The crowd sighed. Lin Feng, who had only shown his power 3 days ago, he seemed to be invincible. He continued to shock people with his incredible strength. If you look at him, it seems like he is around 15 or has just turned 16. The crowd was trying to guess how old Lin Feng was compared to his battle ability. They were even more stupefied when they thought about it. He was still 16 years old and could defeat a cultivator of the third Ling Qi layer who was on the elite disciple rankings. How was that possible? Was he really human? Lin Feng stopped moving. His sleeves were swaying with the breeze, but the qi and the sword force which filled the atmosphere were still omnipresent and just as oppressing as before. Lei Bo's body was still feeling the immense pressure crushing down on his body, making it hard for him to breathe. Give up? Lin Feng had a cold smile on the corner of his mouth. This is a fight in which we both put our lives at stake. If I live, you die, and if I die, you live. We are fellow disciples of the Yun Hai sect and we don't hate each other, so why do you need to kill me? Said Lei Bo, hoping to make Lin Feng change his mind. How ridiculous. Do you think that I will fall for that? Could it be that you forgot what you said before this battle? You said that you could kill me whenever you wanted? You even said that you didn't even need to release your spirit to kill me. Have you also forgotten that this battle is a battle where our lives are at stake? You said it yourself. If you were stronger than me, would you still say that we are fellow disciples and let me live? Lin Feng was disgusted by Lei Bo's words. Saying so easily that they were fellow disciples and that they didn't hate each other after everything that he had said before, he had to be insane. Lin Feng, you are extremely strong, but it would be impossible for you to kill me. Even if you defeat me, you will have to bear the consequences for it. Lei Bo knew that Lin Feng wasn't going to let him off, so he tried to threaten him. Oh, is that so? Watch me then. Lin Feng's eyes suddenly started to fill with killing intent and a smile appeared on his face. His sword released even more force coupled with thunderous roars. Lei Bo started to rub his eyes as he could not believe what he was seeing. He couldn't see Lin Feng anymore. Instead of Lin Feng, there was only a huge sword in front of him. That sword was glowing, and coupled with the extremely bright light was a dark fog. In that dark fog, so many lights were sparkling that Lei Bo had the impression that a million swords were hiding within it. The black fog had started to move in his direction. Extremely loud thunder sounds spread throughout the atmosphere. Lei Bo shouted extremely loudly. Even more powerful and intense thunder emerged from his body. His body was coated in a qi which was yellowish blue. It contained the power of thunder and lightning. When they saw the light surrounding Lei Bo, the crowd was surprised. What was Lei Bo doing exactly? Lin Feng's sword was more suited to battle. He didn't need to consume too much energy in order to carry out powerful attacks, and he could also use it for protection. It gave the impression that Lin Feng was like a fortified mountain. The crowd didn't understand what was going on. The crowd could not see Lin Feng's sword the same way Lei Bo did. In Lei Bo's eyes, there were a million swords whose lights were dazzling, and which were trying to kill him. Sword lights were shining everywhere inside the black fog and could take his life at any time. It's the end for you, said Lin Feng in a cold voice which stupefied the entire crowd. Sword of Nirvana. Sword of Nirvana made his sword turn into a deadly sword. Each strike would take a life, and its power defied the heavens. His sword descended from the heavens themselves towards Lei Bo. It seemed like his sword had pierced the heavens themselves. From a distance it could be seen that a hole was pierced through the clouds and the heavens had been pierced. It looked like his sword would destroy the entire universe if it stood against him. It was over with this strike. Lei Bo was finished. The entire crowd was blankly staring at that wonderfully mystical sword. The millions of swords as well as the black fog disappeared from Lei Bo's vision, but his face revealed that he had given up all hope because there was a terrifying light which kept moving towards him. It was most likely the last light that he would see in his life. Don't. Lei Bo's shout resonated everywhere in the stormy gorge, but his body could not move. He was still stood on the stage motionless. After what seemed to be an eternity, a thin mark appeared between his eyebrows. It was a thin bloody mark which slowly started to pour with blood. His body fell heavily onto the fighting stage within the life and death arena. That's what the life and death arena was about, life and death. Did he die? The 21st ranked elite disciple who had a thunder spirit had been killed? Lei Bo had wanted to protect Mo Xie. He had wanted to kill Lin Feng and gain the elder's favor. He would have never thought that he would become Lin Feng's stepping stone. At that moment, the patriarch was secretly afraid that Lin Feng would start his verbal assault where he had left off. Even though the elite disciple exam was about fighting, not many disciples had participated in it. This kind of event was unprecedented in the history of the Yun Hai sect's elite disciple exam. It had, however, been an extremely enlightening event, and many disciples were forced to look deeply at their actions until now. There was not a single person who regretted watching these events unfold. The crowd of the Yun Hai sect had realized that they were witnessing the rise of an incomparable genius. I want that young man. Duan Tianlang's eyes were glowing. He then quickly glanced at Duan Han. Lin Feng's abilities and power were infinitely higher than that of his son, of whom he was already intensely proud. If he doesn't join me, I will make sure he dies today. I will not allow him to rise up or let him become more powerful. He could become an extremely large obstacle. The patriarch of the Hao Yu sect, Chu Qing, as well as Bing Han of the Ice and Snow Mountain village thought the exact same thing. If Lin Feng continued becoming more and more powerful, he would definitely become one of the 8 high officials. Lin Feng couldn't understand all these people's thoughts. He wasn't even as strong as Mo Xie. He was unable to kill Mo Xie, but he definitely wanted to make him understand that he could not bully and threaten him as he wished. Since he hadn't showed all of his abilities so far, the sect did not recognize him. Then he just had to show them more. Holding his soft sword in the hand while his robes were swaying in the air, Lin Feng slowly glanced around at the stormy gorge. Mo Xie, because he is an elder, he dares to behave unscrupulously. He dares to try and kill disciples in cold blood. He is the shame and disgrace of the Yun Hai sect. My current strength doesn't enable me to kill that scum of the sect. What I want is for that degenerate to get expelled from the sect. The entire crowd was stunned, astonished, stupefied. Lin Feng had wild ambitions. He suddenly wanted Mo Xie to get expelled from the sect. That was almost impossible. If Mo Xie was expelled from the sect, Mo Kanglan would completely lose face. That guy really is insane. Lu Fei was looking at Lin Feng. She was speechless. She couldn't stand Mo Xie either, but she had never thought of trying to get him expelled from the sect, not even in her dreams. It was impossible for an elite disciple to get an elite elder expelled from the sect, but Lin Feng was not sparing any efforts in his attempt to remove Mo Xie. Mo Xie, who was sitting on the viewing platform, looked ghastly pale. In his eyes, a mere disciple was less than a bug to him. They didn't even exist in his eyes, and suddenly, there was a disciple on the fighting stage of the life and death arena accusing him of various things and calling him the shame and the scum of the sect, and on top of that, he wanted to get him expelled from the sect. He had never been so humiliated in all of his life. He used to be the one who demanded that other people would be expelled from the sect. He used to be the one who expelled lowly disciples from the sect. However, these things were now happening to him. If these things had happened at any other time before then, he would have killed Lin Feng without the slightest hesitation. But that was almost impossible now because of Nan Gongling. As the patriarch of the Yun Hai sect, he had to give consideration to all parties. Mo Xie was an elite elder and his father, Mo Kanglan, was a great elder. They were both given the great honor of enforcing the rules within the sect. As far as Lin Feng was concerned, he was one of the most extraordinary geniuses that the Yun Hai sect had ever had. Wen Ren Yan would never be able to achieve the same level as Lin Feng, they were worlds apart. Lin Feng was also protected by Protector Bei. If he wanted Mo Xie to be a little bit penalized, that could possibly be arranged. However, Lin Feng said that if Mo Xie was still in the Yun Hai sect, then he would leave. Lin Feng's terms for staying within the sect was to expel Mo Xie from the sect. I know that Mo Xie's status is high and important, he is an elite elder. I also know that his father, Mo Kanglan, is a chief figure in the Yun Hai sect and that he has dedicated his life to serving the sect. I am also aware that I am currently a nobody within the sect and that my words carry little weight. I know that if Mo Xie commits crimes, I cannot do much, but Mo Xie tried to kill me on multiple occasions. Even after being almost killed by Protector Bei, he still had thoughts on taking my life. If he is not severely punished for his crimes, how am I supposed to put my mind at rest and stay within the sect? I just have my sword to show everyone what I am really capable of. This is my only way of proving to the Yun Hai sect that having me is 10 times, no, 100 times better than having Mo Xie. Lin Feng's words were inspiring. Lin Feng was even crazier than Wen Ren Yan but was in no way weaker than him. Everyone, however, was wondering how Lin Feng could prove that having him was 100 times better than having Mo Xie. Nan Gongling was curious as well to know how Lin Feng could prove that. At that moment, Lin Feng, who was still standing on the central fighting stage of the life and death arena, was just looking at many elite disciples sitting on the sidelines and declared, "Today is the elite disciple exam. I, Lin Feng, am now challenging any elite disciple who is willing to fight against me. Anyone can come and challenge me. No matter what kind of battle, normal or life and death battle, no matter how many I need to fight against, I will fight with anyone under any terms." What? People in the crowd were stunned. You could hear everyone's heartbeat start to intensify. He's a madman. That guy is insane. He wants to challenge every elite disciple? How insane. Wen Ren Yan could even compete with core disciples. Even some of the disciples within the top 10 elite disciples could fight with core disciples. They all had unique skills and abilities. They were much stronger than Lei Bo. Lin Feng suddenly dared to look at these elite disciples as if they were weaklings. What was going to happen? The crowd was just speechless. Could it be that Lin Feng was really insane? Had he lost his mind after defeating Lei Bo? But if he was able to defeat any of the elite disciples, then wouldn't he really prove to the Yunhai sect that having him was better than having Mo Xie? If he could defeat any elite disciple under their own terms, then wasn't it even greater than 100 times the worth of Mo Xie? This bastard. Lu Fei's magnificent eyes were wide open. Lin Feng was way too crazy. A short time before, he was only a simple ordinary disciple and nothing more. Han Man couldn't help but giggle. He was so proud to see Lin Feng, who was like a brother to him, on the fighting stage of the life and death arena while issuing the challenge. He had a big smile on his face. Nan Gongling was also shocked beyond belief. He was completely stunned. Lin Feng wanted to challenge all of the elite disciples? Even though Lin Feng was naturally gifted, had he really become so terrifyingly strong? Actually, as far as I can remember, he has not been using his spirit. Nan Gongling suddenly had a realization. He realized that he had never seen Lin Feng release his spirit. He was extremely curious, and he was excited to find out what Lin Feng's spirit was. Considering he had already mastered sword skills and sword forces, could it be that he had a sword spirit? If he had a sword spirit, then he would probably be able to make his sword force even more powerful. End of chapter 81. Chapter 82. The Rise of a Genius. Currently there were some elite disciples whose eyes had lit up, especially the 20 at the top of the rankings. They all regarded themselves as geniuses. They were arrogant and prideful. But Lin Feng, who was on the fighting stage of the life and death arena, dared to talk conceited nonsense and challenge every elite disciple to battle against him. But many of them were worried about how strong Lin Feng really was, especially those close to Lei Bo within the rankings. Lin Feng was so strong that he had managed to kill Lei Bo and was even threatening all of them at that moment. What made them even more worried was that many of these geniuses had noticed that Lin Feng hadn't released his spirit at all. If he had a sword spirit, his strength would probably be monstrous. That would definitely be terrifying and incredibly dangerous to step on the same stage as him. Nobody had dared to reply to Lin Feng as many were deep in thought. The atmosphere was drowned into absolute silence. That silence was broken a few times by some of the sword qi, which emanated from Lin Feng's body, ripping through the air. Wen Renyan, you called me a piece of trash, a nobody, and said that you can easily kill me. Do I need to come down and beg you to kill me? Now that you have an opportunity to kill me, what are you waiting for? Are you currently not scared to challenge like those you called worthless before? Lin Feng was looking at Wen Renyan. When everyone heard his calm voice as he spat insults into Wen Renyan's face, they were all stupefied. Lin Feng was definitely someone who continued to surprise. He suddenly dared challenge the top ranked of all the elite disciples. Wen Renyan was at the peak of the third Ling Qi layer. Even though Lei Bo was at the same Ling Qi layer, nobody would dare compare Lei Bo and Wen Renyan. They had nothing in common at all. Cultivators of the same Ling Qi layer were not necessarily comparable. For example, Lin Feng was at the second Ling Qi layer but could defeat and kill Lei Bo, who was at the third Ling Qi layer. The skills practiced and battle experience played an extremely important role regardless of the layer reached. Wen Renyan was also similar to Lin Feng. He had broken through to the third Ling Qi layer, but many core disciples of the fourth Ling Qi layer didn't dare provoke him. You are overestimating your abilities. Just because you killed Lei Bo doesn't mean that you can compete with me. Lei Bo was nothing in comparison with me. In my eyes, Lei Bo was the same as you, a piece of trash, a nobody. Wen Renyan was looking at Lin Feng with eyes filled with disdain. Lin Feng wasn't weak, but challenging Wen Renyan was like committing suicide. Strength is strength. In Wen Renyan's eyes, Lin Feng was a weak piece of trash. You talk so much shit. Is it because you want to show off in front of everybody? Lin Feng didn't understand what Wen Renyan exactly meant. Lin Feng then added, you don't have to be like that. Since you are so powerful and that you consider me as a piece of trash, as a nobody, then just climb up onto the fighting stage immediately. Show everybody how strong you are and kill me. Show everybody your real power. Actions will always be better than the drivel from your mouth. Everybody will believe you when you come onto this fighting stage and prove your words, or you can continue to hide there and talk big. Everybody can talk big. Lei Bo also called me a piece of trash before I killed him. He said he was stronger than me. What happened in the end? Lin Feng's words were straightforward, and he was clearly provoking Wen Renyan, but what he was saying was actually the truth. Anyone can talk big, but it only matters if your actions can prove what you say. If Wen Renyan climbed onto the fighting stage of the life and death arena, he would gain infinite glory. He would be regarded as an amazing talent by everyone in the sect. But he wasn't doing it at all. Not only didn't he climb onto the fighting stage, but he kept talking and talking, bragging about how amazing he was. In his eyes, Lin Feng was just a nobody, an insect which he could crush at any time. Since Lin Feng could be crushed at any time, why did he need to fight? Talking and humiliating Lin Feng was enough, but was that enough to be regarded as a strong cultivator? Wen Renyan glanced at the people standing next to him who were still looking as arrogant as ever. You guys go and kill him. I will give you the glory of killing him. Many people's eyes were glowing with killing intent when they heard Wen Renyan. Wen Renyan was considered a great cultivator by everyone. The glory for killing him, they all know what it meant. Wen Renyan had a lot of profound pills. There was a profound pill which he had in abundance, a sort of pill which had a deadly attraction force. I'm going to kill him, said a silhouette while moving towards the fighting stage. It was a young man aged 17, no older than 18. His gazes was as sharp as a dagger. He looked to have an extremely brutal nature. Tong Shou, the Blade Master. It's him. Lin Feng is in trouble. The young disciple came out from the crowd. When Tu Fu had become a core disciple, there were two extremely respected and strong elite disciples, Wen Renyan and Tong Shou. Even though Tong Shou was ranked 6th on the elite disciple rankings, nobody had doubts concerning the fact that Tong Shou was much stronger than the 4 others who were above him in the rankings. That was because Tong Shou's spirit was a blade spirit. If Tong Shou only had a blade spirit, people wouldn't have so much faith in him, but he was similar to Lin Feng with his mastery of force, he was able to control blade forces. Tong Shou wasn't able to master blade forces like Lin Feng mastered sword forces. There was actually a huge gap between them as far as forces were concerned. However, Tong Shou had already broken through to the 3rd Ling Qi layer, which would bridge the gap in strength between their forces. Tong Shou versus Lin Feng, it should be a very balanced battle. Alright, go ahead. Don't immediately kill him. When the time of his last breath comes, make him kneel down in front of me so that he understands before he dies that I am much stronger than him. The difference between him and me is colossal. Wen Renyan said that in an indifferent tone. Don't worry, I understand. Tong Shou slightly nodded and then went up onto the central fighting stage. He was facing Lin Feng and looking as if he had already won. He then grabbed the long knife that he had on his back, then said in a voice filled with hatred, I have used this knife for a long time. Being killed by it should be an honor for you. If I properly understand, you're implying that you choose to have a battle where one of us must die, correct? Lin Feng asked that question in an indifferent tone. Do you think that I have time to play with you? Tong Shou was looking at Lin Feng in an evil way. His expression was sharp and poignant like his knife. His body was radiating killing intent. Tong Shou grabbed his long knife and caressed it as if it was his beloved girlfriend. The knife is an extremely powerful weapon. It's the best of all bladed weapons. The blade spirit is also an extremely powerful spirit, said Tong Shou. I've always heard that swords were the best bladed weapons. It's really the first time that I have heard that a knife is the best of all bladed weapons. Lin Feng was calling in question what Tong Shou said. What do you know about such things? A blade from a sword is too heavy. Sword force is also much harder to control. How could you even compare a knife and a sword? Today, I will show you what a knife is. You will understand that it is the best bladed weapon ever, said Tong Shou. A powerful energy emerged from his long knife and spread throughout the atmosphere like a fierce flood. It seemed like it was cutting everything in its path. Blade force. Lin Feng was surprised. How could that guy brag about his knife? Lin Feng also mastered forces and the force of that knife was quite weak in comparison. Lin Feng's sword emitted a whistling sound. The atmosphere was filled with 2 opposing forces. The forces on the fighting stage were extremely sharp and were piercing and cutting everything within their path. Blade force against sword force, how terrifying. Many people who were close to the fighting stage were projected back by the forces which had just been released. Many could feel the oppressive nature of these forces. They were too close. They had the feeling that they were going to be cut and pierced by the confrontation of the 2 forces. But it seems like Tong Shou's knife will be much stronger. After all, he is a cultivator of the 3rd Ling Qi layer. He's much stronger than Lin Feng. It looks like Lin Feng was unlucky this time. So, do you still think that swords are better than knives? Tong Shou was arrogantly looking at Lin Feng. Ignorant, snorted Lin Feng. Lin Feng didn't reply to Tong Shou's question and was sneering at him. I'm ignorant? Alright, I will show you who the ignorant one is. When Tong Shou finished talking, the force released from his knife became even stronger and more powerful. It seemed like it was going to completely envelop the sword force and qi. Celestial spirit, thought Lin Feng. Lin Feng released his spirit but didn't say anything. Everything around him started to change into a world of darkness. The entire world was now covered in complete darkness. He became omniscient. He could feel and sense every single bit of blade force and sword force around him. He knew where every single particle of energy was situated and exactly how they were moving around in the atmosphere. Lin Feng's eyes had turned completely pitch black. They looked like black holes. The knife is the best bladed weapon. It is too powerful. A sword is not even comparable with such a magnificent weapon. Tong Shou took a step forward and suddenly the color of the atmosphere changed. It was filled with the horrifying blade force from his knife. Tong Shou moved towards Lin Feng and he looked like he was invincible. An incredibly powerful strength seemed to fall from the sky onto Lin Feng's body and then started oppressing Lin Feng. Laceration. Tong Shou shouted extremely loudly as he stabbed forward with his knife. It seemed like even the sky could not stop itself from being lacerated. Lin Feng looked as calm and serene. He remained absolutely fearless as he stood there. It seemed like he completely disregarded the power of Tong Shou's knife. The glowing light of his sword started rising into the air towards the atmosphere where Tong Shou's blade force was the weakest. Boom! Nan Gongling, heart was pounding. Tong Shou's knife was like a hot knife cutting through butter. It was as fast as lightning with its attack. Lin Feng's sword force kept being lacerating by the force contained within the knife. It seemed like Lin Feng's body could get lacerated at any second. Instead of dodging, Lin Feng had used his sword to counterattack. Why? Even though Lin Feng could use his sword in an extremely skillful way, the force of his sword wasn't as strong as Tong Shou's blade force. If Lin Feng could get rid of Tong Shou's blade force, then there probably wouldn't be any problem, but that seemed impossible. If Lin Feng didn't dodge the attacks, then Lin Feng's body would be cut into two. During that extremely short amount of time, Nan Gongling had a million thoughts rushing through his mind. That young disciple who certainly would be able to rise up someday, was he going to get killed that easily and that quickly? Lin Feng had gotten much too excited. He should have controlled himself better. Tong Shou was smiling coldly. He wouldn't have thought that it would be this easy to kill Lin Feng. What alternative was there? Lin Feng had put himself into this situation. If Lin Feng had known earlier, then he wouldn't have said that blade force was weaker than sword force. Besides, wasn't the knife much quicker than the sword? Ignorant. Tong Shou could already see Lin Feng's body being cut into two. The crowd was also already imagining that. Everybody had stopped breathing. They were speechlessly staring at the fighting stage and had the impression that there was nothing on it but a knife and a sword. Finally, the deadly light of the knife vanished. It seemed like time had stopped. Tong Shou's knife was 20 centimeters above Lin Feng's head and Lin Feng's sword was now held at his waist. What was happening? Their two bodies had frozen in that strange position. A small breeze was blowing in the air. Somebody coughed, breaking the terrifying silence that had consumed the whole arena. Who won? Suddenly, somebody asked the question. It was not clear to them who had won the battle. Everything had been too fast. They didn't even know where to look. Tong Shou seemed like he was about to speak. Everybody was stupefied. Had he really killed Lin Feng? How did you do that? The one who asked that question was Tong Shou. It seemed like he couldn't believe what had just happened. At that moment, Lin Feng spoke slowly and unhurriedly. Blade force and sword force are the same, they are force. A force is a good way to enhance your attack power as well as other abilities necessary in a battle. A knife has many different uses in life, it is a tool created to aid us. My sword is different, the sword is made for the sole purpose of killing. Lin Feng was standing straight with his head held high. Tong Shou had blood pouring from his chest. Blood was flowing endlessly from his body onto the ground. Everybody was just staring at the amount blood in shock. I understand, said Tong Shou while his eyes slowly closed themselves. Then, his body also slowly collapsed onto the ground. Immediately after, the crowd could not believe their eyes. Lin Feng had thrown the body into the crowd of disciples. He refused to let it remain on the stage in disgrace. Tong Shou had lost. Another genius had been killed by Lin Feng. How terrifying. Everybody had the impression that they were in a dream when looking at Lin Feng. It was like he had supernatural powers. He was like a death god as he stood on the main stage. It seemed like nobody was able to defeat him. No matter how strong his opponent was, Lin Feng was always stronger. Nan Gongling took a deep breath. He didn't know what to think though. Another valued genius of the Yunhai sect had died, and it was only because Lin Feng wanted to prove how powerful he was. Nan Gongling did not want to pay that price. But even though Nan Gongling regretted losing so many disciples, he still felt gratified to have a disciple such as Lin Feng. He was also happy to see the rise of a real genius. That kind of strength, that kind of power, who could compete with it? He was starting to believe Lin Feng. Lin Feng just needed a little bit more time and nobody could stop him. Even 100 Mo Xie-like cultivators wouldn't be able to defeat Lin Feng. End of Chapter 82. Chapter 83. Confrontation of Geniuses. Lin Feng turned around and looked at the elite disciples once again. Does another one of Wen Renyan's delegates wish to come onto the fighting stage and die in his place? Nobody dared to reply, not even those who were above Tong Shou in the ranking list. Tong Shou's knife was extremely powerful. Even if they wanted to win, they thought it wasn't worth the risk as they may lose their life in doing so. Once again, Lin Feng had used his sword to strike only once and Tong Shou, blood had been spilled. What had scared them even more is that they didn't know if Lin Feng had really shown all his strength. He had only required a single strike, which was not enough to measure his power. Each time he would increase the power depending on his opponent. Tong Shou had been killed in a single strike. Exactly how much of his strength was still remaining hidden? He was always stronger than his opponent. How was that possible? Everybody was staring at Wen Renyan as if they thought that Wen Renyan was the only one who could defeat Lin Feng. Today's elite disciple exam could almost be entitled, The Rise of Lin Feng. Some people in the crowd were smiling wryly as someone made that comment. The elite disciple exam had gone completely off track. The original purpose was completely forgotten. There was only a single person at the center of their attention. They were focusing on that genius who was named Lin Feng. Almost everybody without exception was intensely staring at Wen Renyan. Wen Renyan frowned as his face twisted with anger and he looked like a demon with hatred filling his eyes. Lin Feng had been demonstrating extraordinary talent every time he fought. Each time, Lin Feng was surprising everybody even more. Therefore, at that moment, Wen Renyan had the feeling that he was being slapped in the face by every single person who was staring at him because he had kept humiliating Lin Feng over and over again, calling him a nobody and a piece of trash. His own words had come back to humiliate him in front of the entire sect. At that moment, no other elite disciple would dare to fight against Lin Feng. Only Wen Renyan could fight against Lin Feng. However, at this point many people were scared that Wen Renyan had talked too big and was not Lin Feng's match. Lin Feng was extremely strong and had hidden his power to such a great degree. He hadn't talked big, and he had not lost face yet. How could anyone call him a nobody or a piece of trash? Wen Renyan, are you not supposed to prove to everybody that I am a piece of trash and a nobody now? I think that's what you should do, shouted Lin Feng, which broke the silence and echoed throughout the arena. Lin Feng was also staring at Wen Renyan and quickly glanced at Hanman, who had been injured by Wen Renyan. Lin Feng really wanted to kill Wen Renyan when he had found out about him injuring Hanman. He had built up a great deal of killing intent just thinking about it. Wen Renyan had lied and said to everybody that Lu Fei was his girlfriend. Lin Feng, because Lu Fei had now said that she was his girlfriend, wanted to kill Wen Renyan even more. Because of Wen Renyan, he was once again stuck with Lu Fei. Wen Renyan was more arrogant than strong. Since you are stronger than me, come and kill me, otherwise it means that I am stronger than you and you are just courting death. Lin Feng was secretly had a cold smile in his heart. Wen Renyan and Mo Xie were the same. They had to die because of what they had done to him and his friends. If Lin Feng didn't kill them, whenever they would have an opportunity to kill Lin Feng, they would do so without hesitation. How ridiculous. How pathetic, said Wen Renyan as he started walking towards the highest central stage of the life and death arena. In the blink of an eye, everybody's expression changed. They could not hold back their excitement. They couldn't wait to watch the battle of these two geniuses. Wen Renyan was the top-ranked elite disciple who could even fight with core disciples. He was ranked first from all the powerful elite disciples. Before Lin Feng appeared, Wen Renyan was considered as the junior disciple with the greatest future potential. He was considered as a treasured genius within the sect. Of course, his strength hadn't reached that of Ling Hu Hishan or Tu Fu. The rise of Lin Feng seemed like it had started. Lin Feng was killing all the arrogant disciples because they had humiliated him or threatened him. The ordinary elder Lu Yuan's cultivation would be crippled, and he would be expelled from the sect because of Lin Feng. Lin Feng also wanted Mo Xie to be expelled from the sect. These two disciples were considered as outstanding geniuses in the Yun Hai sect. Who could dare criticize them? Do you think that just because you defeated Lei Bo and Tong Shou, you can compete with me? Wen Renyan said with his usual arrogant and aggressive tone and then added, if I want to, I can crush you like a bug. You're just a nobody, an insect, in my eyes. I don't think it's worth fighting against you, but you are insisting so much that I have no choice but to prove you how ridiculous your provocations are. How pitiful for you that you are so overconfident. I will use your death to prove to everyone that my abilities are endless. He was arrogant, aggressive and thought he was the best cultivator in the world. However, he was indeed strong and respected within the sect. The only thing which is endless is your ability to talk shit, shouted Wen Renyan as he grew even more angry. The more Wen Renyan heard Lin Feng talk, the even more hideous his face looked. Alright, when the two disciples were both on the fighting stage, Nan Gongling started talking. You are the geniuses of my sect. The Yun Hai sect will need you both in the future. You are the successors of those in charge of Yun Hai sect. Please let's make this battle an educational one for yourselves and everybody who is present. There will certainly be a lot to learn from your battle. So please, this time, do not fight until the death. Nan Gongling thought that Wen Renyan and Lin Feng were outstanding geniuses within the Yun Hai sect. The Yun Hai sect could be proud to have such disciples. If any of them died, then it would be too much of a loss for the Yun Hai sect. Nan Gongling hoped that none of them would die or get severely injured, or to be more precise, he hoped Lin Feng wouldn't die or be injured. That was because Nan Gongling perfectly knew how powerful Wen Renyan was. His strength was way too monstrous. Besides, Wen Renyan had a very rare spirit which was more powerful than an average spirit. Patriarch, that piece of trash has been provoking me over and over again. How could I not hate him bitterly for that? This will be his grave, said Wen Renyan. Nan Gongling was unable to convince Wen Renyan. Nan Renyan definitely wanted to kill Lin Feng. If he didn't, he wouldn't be able to prove everyone that he was the true genius of the Yun Hai sect. Lin Feng was just a nobody and could not be compared with the mighty Wen Renyan. This was Wen Renyan's current thought process. Lin Feng, please refrain from this fight. Nan Gongling couldn't help but beg Lin Feng to not fight. Lin Feng was slightly smiling and said, while looking at Nan Gongling, it seems like the patriarch still isn't convinced of my abilities, could it be that I have not shown you enough yet? Nan Gongling smiled wryly and said while shaking his head, Lin Feng, Wen Ren Yan has broken through to the third Ling Qi layer and has a blue bamboo beast spirit. Even though you are very strong, you still need more time before you are able to catch up with him. Blue bamboo? Blue bamboo beast spirit? Lin Feng's eyes shrunk. In his memories, the blue bamboo beast spirit was a sort of snake who was small yet very venomous. It had blue eyes and was as fast as lightning. Besides, it was capable of dodging attacks very efficiently. Its power was horrifying and just the mention of it made many people cower in fear. That's why his eyes looked so hideous when he was angry. Sometimes, they look like they're blue. That comes from his beast spirit. Lin Feng was thinking about Wen Ren Yan's hideous blue eyes. They really looked like that of a snake and made people feel very uncomfortable when looking at them. But would Lin Feng lose only because Wen Ren Yan had a blue bamboo beast spirit? Patriarch, don't impose restrictions on them. That little brat keeps humiliating my disciple over and over again, he must die. If he doesn't die, then it would make me lose face. Do not put them under any restrictions in this fight. At that moment, a cold and high-pitched voice spread through the atmosphere. A woman was on the top of the gorge. She had called out as she was slowly descending into the gorge. Her body looked lithe and graceful. In the blink of an eye, she landed onto the viewing platform. Who is she? Wen Ren Yan is her disciple? The crowd was staring at the woman who had just appeared. She looked haggard and the little hair she had on her head was hanging loosely, which gave people a gloomy impression. She looked like she had come straight out of a horror story. Besides, she dared to talk to the patriarch in such a way which meant that she certainly had a high status. There were also a certain number of disciples who recognized her. They wouldn't have expected her to intervene. Things were not looking good for Lin Feng with the arrival of this woman. Teacher. Even though Wen Ren Yan was normally extremely haughty and arrogant, he was acting very courteously in front of this woman. He was even more polite to her than to Nan Gongling. The woman slightly nodded while looking cold and detached. She glanced at Duan Tianlang and then said to Nan Gongling, Patriarch, we should not get involved in this issue, otherwise, that would make these two disciples lose face. Nan Gongling was making a wry smile. He hadn't thought that this woman would appear there. It seemed like things were getting worse and worse. Old woman, you come here and tell the patriarch that he shouldn't get involved, but what are you doing yourself? A silhouette which was high the air said as its wings created small whirlpools in the atmosphere. Protector Bei. Nan Gongling was even more surprised with each passing minute. The conflict between Wen Ren Yan and Lin Feng made two of the protectors get involved. Lin Feng, what do you think? Said Protector Bei. I agree to a battle to the death. Lin Feng had obviously understood what Protector Bei meant. If he said he didn't agree, Protector Bei would protect him. He had to fight in order to settle his grievance. If Wen Ren Yan knew what even one of Lin Feng's spirits were, then he would immediately refuse this battle and escape. Even if he was entirely convinced by his own strength, Lin Feng also had powerful spirits which were much stronger than his own. Lin Feng would not back down from this fight. Protector Bei said, if you really want to fight in a battle to death, this is your own decision, and I will not intervene, but you have to remember that you might regret it later. No need to think about useless things, said Lin Feng, who shook his head. He was already determined to kill Wen Ren Yan. Okay. Protector Bei felt gratified and was nodding. He then said, once you have won, I will help you have Mo Xie expelled from the sect. When they heard what Protector Bei had said, the entire crowd was stupefied. Protector Bei was planning to help him expel Mo Xie from the sect? It looked like the old man of the Xing Chen Pavilion was an incredible figure within the sect. Who else could make such a promise to Lin Feng? He was also incredibly sure of Lin Feng's victory. Mo Xie's face looked hideous and evil intentions filled his mind. If Lin Feng won this fight, then Protector Bei would expel him from the sect. What a bastard. Mo Xie hated Protector Bei so much at that moment. The difference between their statuses within the hierarchy was like heaven and earth. Protector Bei was even higher in status than his Mo Kang Lan. Mo Xie could only hope that Lin Feng would die in the upcoming battle. Old woman, if Lin Feng is defeated, I will not get involved. However, if Lin Feng wins, will you get involved? Protector Bei was looking at the woman as he asked his question. Why would I do that? Besides, my disciple will not lose. The old woman was looking at Protector Bei with eyes full of confidence in her disciple. Protector Bei was also very proud of Lin Feng and believed that this would be his victory. Protector Bei nodded, looking indifferent. Since it's like that, you may now fight, said the old woman. Nan Gongling was smiling wryly. Now that the old woman and Protector Bei had appeared, nobody was listening to him anymore. So, after this battle, there would be only one genius disciple left? Nan Gongling was extremely reluctant, but what choice did he have? Lin Feng and Wen Ren Yan's battle was inevitable. Both of them were standing on the fighting stage of the life and death arena. Wen Ren Yan was looking at Lin Feng and said, I really don't understand why Protector Bei has any confidence in you. He surprisingly believes that you can defeat me. He will soon find out that he has overestimated your abilities. In front of me, you are just a miserable insect. In front of me, people will think that your abilities are pathetic and miserable. I will prove to everyone that I am the only genius within the Yun Hai sect. When Wen Renyan finished talking, an evil qi emerged from his body. From his back, a small snake appeared and floated behind him. Even though the snake was only a shadow, people had the impression that it was a real venomous snake. This was Wen Renyan's blue bamboo beast spirit. End of chapter 83. Chapter 84. The real threat. The small blue bamboo snake slithered up onto Wen Renyan's body until it finally sat atop his head. Its blue eyes looked incredibly evil. Lin Feng, look into my eyes. Wen Renyan was speaking loudly. Lin Feng was staring at Wen Renyan's evil blue eyes. They looked like torrents of lightning. Lin Feng was so absorbed in Wen Renyan's eyes that he was absent-minded for a second. Wen Renyan had an evil smile on his face. He suddenly moved as fast as lightning and landed in front of Lin Feng in the blink of an eye. He thrust out his hand directly towards Lin Feng's head. How quick! Everybody was stupefied. Not only did Wen Renyan's eyes look really evil, but he was also extremely quick and agile. When Wen Renyan released his spirit, his entire body looked like a snake. Looking directly into his eyes for even a few seconds could lead to your death. This looks bad. Lin Feng had been absent-minded for only a brief moment and had quickly used his sword to block the attack. In the blink of an eye, an extremely powerful energy struck against Lin Feng's sword and sent him into the air. His soft sword was zigzagging in the air and it looked like he was going to fall heavily on the ground because of Wen Renyan's attack. Moonlight feather agility. Lin Feng's body started to twist in midair and he managed to land steadily on both his feet. Wen Renyan didn't even try to come close to Lin Feng. He was still at the same place and said with an evil smile, "You see the colossal difference? You may be a genius, but in front of me, you are nothing. If I want to play with you, I can play with you. Even if I don't attack you, my speed alone would make it impossible for you to even touch a hair on my body." As expected, Lin Feng is strong, but the difference between Wen Renyan is gigantic. Lin Feng is unable to even touch him. Wen Renyan is way too powerful. Even the second of the ranking list would be unable to compete with him. The crowd was convinced that Lin Feng couldn't do anything. Wen Renyan's attacks almost couldn't be blocked. Lin Feng would quickly get discouraged and end up losing his life. Lin Feng's eyes shrunk. He didn't dare look at Wen Renyan's blue pupils again. When Wen Renyan released his spirit, his eyes were filled with an evil light. If you looked at them even for a second, you could be paralyzed. Lin Feng hadn't forgotten what had happened just a moment ago. What the blue bamboo beast spirit allowed Wen Renyan to do was extremely frightening. It granted him incredible speed and the ability to paralyze an opponent. It was a wonderful natural ability. Some geniuses had such amazing spirits that they had a clear advantage over many people. Wen Renyan was one of those people with an amazing spirit. Celestial spirit. Lin Feng's cold look disappeared and was replaced by a pair of pitch-black eyes which looked extremely evil. He gradually became aware of every single movement within the atmosphere as if the world was moving in slow motion. His brain was processing the data at an incredible speed. His sword was diffusing an extremely powerful qi and sword force was gathering. The entire fighting stage was filled with the power from his sword. The smell of blood was still fresh on the fighting stage, however the sword was emanating an aura of death. It felt like whatever the sword attacked would be cursed to death. Sword force, oh isn't that terrific? Wen Renyan was smiling coldly. He was motionless and suddenly an extremely violent energy spread through the atmosphere and attacked Lin Feng. The energy was being released from Wen Renyan's hand in an attempt to crush Lin Feng. This energy was so strong that it did not compare with Wen Renyan's previous attack. Lin Feng managed to break free while looking as agile as the wind. The energy being released by Wen Renyan's hand was shaking the atmosphere. Wen Renyan took a deep breath and tried to attack Lin Feng again. But it seemed like Lin Feng already knew in advance what attack Wen Renyan was attempting and where his attack would target. With graceful and effortless movements, Lin Feng dodged the incoming attack. His body moved like the wind, looking light and agile. It seemed like Lin Feng hadn't required any effort to dodge the attack. The crowd was observing Lin Feng with the greatest attention. Lin Feng's body looked so graceful and agile. Could it be that Lin Feng had learned and practiced an agility technique to dodge attacks? What kind of agility technique could make him so quick and agile? Could it be that it's not an agility technique and that it's just an illusion? If Lin Feng is able to create illusions, then that's really terrifying. Many people in the crowd were talking about that move Lin Feng had just displayed. Wen Renyan, who was extremely quick and agile, had suddenly been unable to reach Lin Feng. Lin Feng had been able to dodge his attacks very easily. Lin Feng was effortlessly dodging attacks and moving with a calm look on his face. Even though the move he had done a moment before looked like an agility technique, it wasn't one, but his celestial spirit allowed him to move without wasted movements. His spirit made him omniscient and aware of everything surrounding him, which enabled him to dodge to perfection. Besides, with his spirit unleashed, Wen Renyan was moving in slow motion for him. Lin Feng also felt more relaxed, which made it easy for him to dodge Wen Renyan's attacks with a calm demeanor. Get lost, snorted Lin Feng. Lin Feng's sword started glowing and he elegantly moved the sword through the air. The force diffused by the sword seemed like it could annihilate anything in its path. Wen Renyan immediately jumped back to a safe distance and did not want to approach Lin Feng. They were both moving incredibly quick. How can you be so quick? Said Wen Renyan, whose evil blue eyes were staring at Lin Feng in shock. I thought you wanted to play with me. Why are you suddenly retreating? I thought I was nothing compared with you. What's wrong? Why do you keep running away? Lin Feng's tone was ice cold. Wen Renyan's blue pupils and Lin Feng's pitch-black eyes both looked demonic, but at that moment Wen Renyan couldn't help but stare at Lin Feng's black eyes with a hint of fear. Why have his eyes also changed? Could it be that he has a spirit similar to mine? Wen Renyan was wondering what was going on while looking at Lin Feng's eyes. He had noticed that Lin Feng's eyes had changed. They were ice cold a moment ago, but now they seemed expressionless, lifeless, and contained endless darkness. In Wen Renyan's opinion, it could only be due to some sort of skill or a spirit. This would be the only thing which could explain Lin Feng's eye transformation. Skill or spirit, it doesn't matter. I will kill you anyway. Wen Renyan thought that deep in his heart. He kept staring at Lin Feng and then said, Lin Feng, look into my eyes. Wen Renyan's normal aggressive and cold look was mixed with his beast-like eyes. This time when Lin Feng stared at Wen Renyan's pupils, nothing happened. His eyes still looked like two endless black holes. As expected, it is a skill. It's impossible to paralyze him. Wen Renyan looked surprised. It seemed like his two blue eyes were going to be useless against Lin Feng. Don't worry, I was just playing with you. Since you seem so impatient to die, I will help you achieve your goal. Wen Renyan raised his head. He held his hand out in front of him. His blue eyes were refracting the light around him. An ash-gray chi emerged from his palm. The chi was carrying a deathly stillness, and the smell of death filled the entire arena. The blue bamboo snake, apart from being extremely quick when dodging attacks, it was extremely venomous, and touching it would be fatal. There was no cultivator who would risk the poison contained within the blue bamboo snake. Wen Renyan had used his spirit to practice demonic skills which allowed him to channel the poison of the blue bamboo snake. The venom was as powerful as an average Zon level attack. It enabled chi to transform into a venomous chi. This type of attack was extremely powerful. It was also able to paralyze the opponent from pain. Touching it would lead to death or immense suffering. These kinds of skills were also extremely hard to practice. Only extremely talented geniuses could learn such skills. Besides, they required spirits which could be considered as rare and mysterious. For example, Wen Renyan could learn such skills because he had a blue bamboo snake spirit. His spirit was a perfect combination for these types of skills, which enabled him to carry out monstrously powerful attacks. Wen Renyan's silhouette flashed in the atmosphere. His velocity was as quick and agile as before. In the blink of an eye, he was already in front of Lin Feng. He then cruelly attacked Lin Feng with his deathly chi. Lin Feng was surprised by this action. He had already been touched by the chi, which suddenly made him move much slower than before. However, Lin Feng was still very quick and agile when dodging the attacks. He jumped and his body suddenly looked like it was floating in the air. He suddenly thrust out with his glowing sword. Wen Renyan's movement abilities were also extremely good. He was moving like an extremely fast and agile snake. Suddenly, Lin Feng's sword made a whistling sound when it passed next to Wen Renyan's body. He had successfully dodged the sword strike from Lin Feng. No wonder that Wen Renyan is so arrogant. He is indeed extremely strong. Lin Feng was feeling gloomy for a second. Wen Renyan's blue pupils as well as his venom were enough to carry out extremely powerful attacks. Besides, his speed when dodging was also extremely good. He could move his body to dodge attacks like a snake. And finally, his speed remained unchanged. It seemed like Wen Renyan had no weakness. If Lin Feng didn't have his celestial spirit, he wouldn't be able to cope with Wen Renyan's speed of attacks. Because of these things, there was probably no other elite disciple who could compete with Wen Renyan. If they fought against him, they would be in quite a terrible situation. I'll see how long you can endure this. Wen Renyan said that while smiling coldly. He was looking down on Lin Feng more than ever. All of a sudden, an incredible chi consumed the entire atmosphere. That's enough, shouted Lin Feng. Deadly sword. An incredible quantity of sword force emerged from the tip of his sword. It also seemed like it illuminated the entire arena with its glow. Wen Renyan venomous chi was progressively being pierced and chopped off into pieces by Lin Feng's sword force. Lin Feng stopped using his sword force and prepared to use his sword of nirvana. A moment ago, you said that you were playing with me. I still have seen how you intend to play with me though. The top-ranked elite disciple, a peerless genius? Please stop talking such nonsense when standing before me. Lin Feng's voice resonated throughout the stormy gorge. Wen Renyan thought that he was playing with Lin Feng, but how was that even possible? Lin Feng hadn't even been slightly harmed by any of Wen Renyan's attacks. He had been able to easily dodge all of them without taking even a scratch. Stop talking nonsense and you are nothing. You are just pathetic and childish, said Wen Renyan, whose tone was filled with disdain. Stop talking nonsense? Do you not have eyes in that head, or do you have no brain? Do you think that you are the only one to possess a spirit? When Lin Feng finished talking, a black shadow appeared behind his back. What stupefied everybody was that within that shadow, there were two pitch-black eyes. They looked extremely evil and demonic. That is the first time that Lin Feng has released his spirit. It looks like it is extremely powerful. What kind of spirit is that? I have never such a thing before. Many people were stupefied when they saw Lin Feng's spirit. That's right, Lin Feng hadn't released his spirit until now. They obviously didn't know that Lin Feng had actually already released the first layer his celestial spirit during the battle, however it could not be detected. Oh my, is that Lin Feng's spirit? I remember that everyone said Lin Feng had a small snake spirit and that it was completely useless. Since when does Lin Feng have such a spirit? Someone had sighed while saying that. The crowd quickly glanced at him and then ignored what he had said. It was an ordinary disciple who was extremely weak. He was obviously misinformed. That's right. I remember Lin Feng's useless and crappy snake spirit. Could it be that Lin Feng has two spirits? Otherwise, how could he have this spirit as well? Another ordinary disciple said. Only the ordinary disciple knew that Lin Feng used to be bullied and humiliated by everyone because of his spirit. Almost all the ordinary disciples remembered that he was known to be a piece of trash. It seemed like Lin Feng had become a completely new person. In such a short time, he had progressed, become so powerful that he was respected by many of the other disciples. Unfortunately for these ordinary disciples, even though they had said the truth, nobody believed them. They believed that these ordinary disciples were just idiots making up rumors. Dual spirit? How could it be that simple? Dual spirits were extremely rare. If Lin Feng had a double spirit, considering that he was already a genius, then it would mean that he is not a genius but a monster. Many of the ordinary disciples were absolutely fascinated by Lin Feng and had become completely captivated. Wen Renyan, I will show you my real power now. Lin Feng sounded completely emotionless, which made everybody shiver with fear. Lin Feng hadn't been using his full strength at all until now? How strong was he? A black fog emerged from his body and started to cover the fighting stage. Lin Feng's pitch-black eyes were looking more and more frightening and cruel than ever before. He was holding his sword in his hand, out of which was emanating a huge quantity of sword qi. Celestial ability. When Lin Feng said that, a small white light flashed in Lin Feng's dark pupils. They looked even more dangerous than Wen Renyan's blue eyes. Lin Feng had already released his spirit, but it was the first time that he was using spirit ability, celestial ability. Wen Renyan was somehow paralyzed. Suddenly, Wen Renyan's spirit had appeared in front of his eyes and was using his own skull against him. That was a refraction. Wen Renyan had a strange sensation at that moment. He had the impression that, in that darkness, he was running but that his body was not moving at all. Moonlight feather agility. Lin Feng started to step forwards. Lin Feng was extremely fast, and he suddenly appeared in front of Wen Renyan and thrust out his deadly sword. Wen Renyan dodged the attack and retaliated with the poison from the palm of his hand. But at the same time, a black qi emerged, absorbed the poison into the black fog. The sword started to glow again, and sword force became extremely thick and powerful. Retreat. Wen Renyan tried to retreat, but he found that Lin Feng was closely following him like his own shadow. No matter what he did, he could not escape from Lin Feng. The dazzling glow from the deadly sword swallowed the entire atmosphere once again. As Wen Renyan retreated, he continued to be met with Lin Feng's sword, and it was getting harder and harder to dodge his strikes. Wen Renyan gnashed his teeth. He was confused because he could see the glow from the sword attacking him from every angle. No matter where he moved, he would be in danger. What astonished Wen Renyan the most, though, is that Lin Feng was attacking continuously without break. It seemed like he did not have to think about anything and was reacting and attacking instantly. How is this possible? Wen Renyan was really astonished. How terrifying. It was as if Lin Feng knew exactly what Wen Renyan was going to do at any moment. Just a moment before, Lin Feng had actually aimed his strike where Wen Renyan was planning to dodge. It seemed like Lin Feng already knew exactly what Wen Renyan would do before he did it. Maybe it has something to do with the oppressing force in the atmosphere? Wen Renyan's face looked ghastly pale. Lin Feng's sword was glowing again, ready to attack. Wen Renyan was exhausted and felt hopeless. He tried to release more poison, but it immediately got absorbed by the strange black fog. It seemed like Lin Feng was able to completely dominate Wen Renyan's strength and abilities. Lin Feng is surprisingly able to put Wen Renyan in such a dire situation? Everybody's face looked as rigid as wood. It seemed like Wen Renyan was no longer at an advantage but was actually in danger. He was just defending himself from attacks. No matter where he dodged, he would be attacked again. Each attack was growing more and more dangerous. It looked like he could be killed at any moment. Was it really Wen Renyan who was playing with Lin Feng, or the opposite? It more looked like Wen Renyan was in serious trouble. Everybody was fascinated by Lin Feng. He was so powerful once he released his spirit. He was a real genius, and his power was terrifying. The entire crowd envied his power and his talent. At that moment, they all understood that Lin Feng was hiding another terrifying power. It seemed like he had another horrifying yet sensational power. How frightening. It seemed like Lin Feng was able to block all of Wen Renyan's senses and abilities. Hey, genius. Why are you having such a hard time dodging and continue to spend your time running away? Lin Feng said these words with an emotionless tone which sent shivers down everyone's spine. Lin Feng surprisingly looked like he wasn't tired at all. It almost even looks like he had more energy than at the beginning of the battle, as if he had just finished his warm-up. The entire crowd was so stupefied that they had mixed feelings. They were both excited and scared of Lin Feng at the same time. Lin Feng's tone and voice had sounded just like that of Wen Renyan before the battle, when Wen Renyan believed he was just toying with Lin Feng. The crowd was looking at Lin Feng like he was an absolute monster. In the end, who was the true genius? Wen Renyan, didn't you say that there was a huge difference between you and me? I believe you said that I'd be unable to reach a hair in your body? Yet now you just keep running away and blocking my attacks. Aren't you feeling ashamed of yourself by now? Lin Feng unsheathed his sword while saying these words, which stabbed deep into Wen Renyan's pride. He was going insane from the humiliation he was suffering. Wen Renyan, were you not supposed to prove everybody that you were an amazing genius? Is this how you intend to prove it? Lin Feng did not look like he was going to let Wen Renyan off at all. He was humiliating Wen Renyan as he continued to attack him endlessly. Wen Renyan's thoughts were getting more and more confused. He was going crazy from the humiliation, and Lin Feng continued attacking him over and over again. You insult others and call them a piece of trash. Well, it seems like you are a piece of trash yourself. Can you feel it? It is called humiliation, but you are a shameless person, so I guess that you do not understand how to feel shame. Lin Feng's words continued to bombard Wen Renyan's pride and arrogance. He stopped dodging attacks and started to gather a large quantity of poison, which threw itself straight at Lin Feng while looking like a snake. Wen Renyan was finally brave enough to challenge death. You should wait until I am done. Then death will come to collect you. Lin Feng's pitch-black eyes were expressionless. The sword force was getting more and more intense. It was consuming everything within the atmosphere and growing in power. Deadly sword. Lin Feng's sword illuminated the atmosphere. It was thrusting towards Wen Renyan, whose heart was pounding. Retreat! A voice shouted from the crowd. Wen Renyan, without hesitation, retreated backwards while focusing all of his remaining power on escaping. Die! That word spread throughout the atmosphere, and Lin Feng's deadly sword began to pierce through the atmosphere, annihilating everything in its path. End of Chapter 84. Chapter 85. Selected Geniuses. Boom! A deadly whistling sound spread throughout the atmosphere. Wen Renyan would probably be exterminated in the blink of an eye. Wen Renyan's face turned deathly pale, and blood started to drip from his mouth under the pressure. That sword was incredibly powerful. Disperse! At that moment, a strong and pure chi came from the sky and collided into that deadly sword chi. The rumbling noise caused by their collision was unceasingly resonating in the entire gorge. Besides, a silhouette had landed in front Lin Feng. It was the old woman who was Wen Renyan's teacher. It's enough. You won, said the old woman in an indifferent tone, yet sounding like she wouldn't tolerate any resistance. Lin Feng's pupil shrank. How ridiculous. Was that all? He had won? But Wen Renyan could continue behaving like before if he didn't die. Old woman, have you forgotten our agreement? Said Protector Bei, sounding annoyed. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten about it, but Wen Renyan is my only disciple. Even if I am losing face now, I cannot even bear the thought of losing my only student and seeing him die. The old woman's words deeply moved the crowd. However, she said to Protector Bei that he didn't have to worry and that she hadn't forgotten their agreement. She had interrupted Lin Feng and Wen Renyan's battle and had saved Wen Renyan. Wasn't that a bit contradictory? But the whole crowd didn't pay attention to that. They were still lost in thoughts, recalling Lin Feng's sword a moment before. Lin Feng had definitely defeated Wen Renyan, the top-ranked elite disciple. At that moment, Lin Feng actually became the strongest of all the elite disciples. Nan Gongling had already stood up. He was staring blankly at the fighting stage of the life and death arena. He was stupefied, but, in his heart, he felt extremely gratified by that amazing young disciple. Lin Feng was just amazing. Alright, the elite disciple exam is over for today. Everybody can leave. Protector Bei was waving at people. He also didn't argue with the old woman, which surprised a multitude of people. The elite disciple exam was over? Everybody was staring at Nan Gongling. Nan Gongling was staring at Protector Bei, who was just nodding. Brilliant. The elite disciple exam is fascinating. There is no need to finish that early. At that moment, Duan Tianlang said these words while scratching his ear, which made Nan Gongling frown. Patriarch, let the crowd disperse. Dissolve the entire sect. Protector Bei suddenly sounded so solemn. The entire crowd was astonished. Disperse the crowd and dissolve the sect? What was going on? Many people in the crowd suddenly had a bad premonition, and then Duan Tianlang's laughter spread in the atmosphere. No need to waste time. Those at the periphery of the mountain are already dead. Nobody can leave. The best option is to stay here. Duan Tianlang, what do you mean? Nan Gongling suddenly seemed extremely strict and firm. He was intensely staring at Duan Tianlang. What do I mean? Nan Gongling, do you think that I have come here only to watch the best elite disciples of the Yunhai sect fighting at the elite disciple exam? You are way too naive, said Duan Tianlang coldly, and then said, I said it already. I came here today because last time, the Yunhai sect refused to hand over some of its best disciples. I came here personally as a delegate of His Majesty. Boom. His words were detonating in people's brain. The ground was faintly shaking, which stupefied everybody. Besides, it seemed like it was shaking more and more. Not too long after, it seemed like the entire gorge was about to cave in. The noises were becoming louder and louder, more and more intense, and were probably covering the entire area of the Yunhai sect. Protector Bay sighed in a sorrowful way. He realized that these people had actually come to the Yunhai sect with harmful intentions. The ground kept shaking and a huge cloud of dust was rising up in the air. At that moment, the crowd looked up in the air and saw a great number of Kai Xie armored cavalry at the top of the gorge. They were carrying bows on their back and looked like they were ready to attack at any moment. Kai Xie armored cavalry. Lin Feng's eyes shrank. How come the armored cavalry were suddenly surrounding the area? Lin Feng glanced at the armored cavalry and then glanced at Lu Fei, but at that moment Lu Fei seemed as surprised as him. What was going on? What had happened? Lu Fei also glanced at Lin Feng. These were her father's personal army, and they were surprisingly surrounding her father's sect. Could it be that my father gave them orders himself? Is it even possible? Lu Fei was thinking and looked extremely perplexed. She thought that it would be ridiculous. Nobody could understand her father better than her, and her father would have never ordered such a thing. What was going on? Duan Tianlang, Nan Gongling looked enraged and furious. His eyes, filled with murderous intentions, were fixedly staring at Duan Tianlang. Nan Gongling, no need to stare at me like this. These Kai Xie armored cavalry are your dear friends, Lu Kanglan's personal army. If there is a problem, talk to him, not to me. Duan Tianlang was smiling evilly. The ground was still shaking. In an instant, the top of the stormy gorge was full of Kai Xie armored cavalry. There were so many of them that not a drop of water could trickle through. The stormy gorge was completely surrounded by Kai Xie armored cavalry, and the situation really looked critical and dangerous. Many disciples of the Yunhai sect were scared and shaking. What did these people want to do? In the stormy gorge, around the life and death arena, the beginning of a great turmoil was about to happen. Wen Ren Yan was in a dire situation as blood dripped from the side of his mouth. He was injured from that strike, and if this battle continued, then he would surely lose his life. However, events had unfolded to his advantage. Suddenly Duan Tianlang started to move down from the viewing platform. All eyes fell onto him as he slowly stepped down. Xu Qing, who was next to him, looked at him anxiously. He surprisingly was moving towards the fighting stage of the life and death arena. He was extremely powerful. It seemed like each of his steps made the entire atmosphere vibrate. He was slowly moving towards the life and death arena and then stepped on the highest fighting stage. He was walking slowly as if he was having a peaceful walk in a flower garden. People of the Yunhai sect, please listen. Duan Tianlang glanced at everybody and said in a loud voice, I, Duan Tianlang, represent His Majesty. My duty is to select some outstanding disciples who will join the holy courtyard of Shui Yu. However, your patriarch has refused to help His Majesty's aim. These days, His Majesty is furious and wants the Yunhai sect to disappear. Duan Tianlang's harsh words penetrated into everybody's soul. He wanted the Yunhai sect to disappear from the Shui Yu country? How could he make such a powerful sect as the Yunhai sect disappear? There was only one solution: exterminate everybody within the sect. These people wanted to exterminate every single member of the Yunhai sect. Everybody was panic-stricken. The Yunhai sect members had joined the sect for the sake of cultivation to become stronger. Being killed for no reason would be an injustice. However, His Majesty is willing to show mercy. He's giving a chance to every single one of you, ordinary disciple, elite disciples as well as core disciples, whose names are on the ranking lists, to accept our offer and leave the Yunhai sect to join the holy courtyard of Shui Yu. The others will not be required. Duan Tianlang's words detonated in everybody's brain. The crowd felt numb after hearing these words. Leave the Yunhai sect? Only those who were ranked disciples? Those who were not ranked felt frustrated in their own lack of power. They wouldn't have the chance to enjoy the best weapons and skills. They may even die here because of the sect they had chosen. Nan Gongling, who was sitting on the viewing platform, didn't look happy to hear this announcement. They wanted to exterminate his beloved Yunhai sect? Did he hear them correctly? The Yunhai sect had already been existing for 1,000 years. It had gone through many great crises, but probably never as serious as the current situation. These were earth-shattering events for the sect. The Hao Yu sect, the Ice and Snow Mountain Village, the Mo Shou sect as well as Duan Tianlang had come to the Yunhai sect to completely wipe its roots from the Shui Yu country. Obviously, all of this originated from the imperial clan. They were the ones who had assigned Duan Tianlang to carry out these tasks. The Yunhai sect had become the imperial clan's prey. Why choose our sect, the Yunhai sect? Nan Gongling sounded cold as ever. He was intensely and fixedly staring at Duan Tianlang, wishing he could tear apart his flesh and bones. Would the Yunhai sect disappear under Nan Gongling's reign? Nan Gongling, you really don't understand, said Duan Tianlang while smiling coldly. If you say that this is because I offended your son, I will not believe it. I think that even you wouldn't believe it. The Hao Yu sect, the ice and snow mountain village, you all came for such a stupid and absurd reason. Nan Gongling glanced at Chu Qing and Han Shuitian and met their gazes. You're right. The Hao Yu sect also refused the request at the beginning, but I told them that I would make the entire Yunhai sect join me or be destroyed. Then, they immediately accepted. Duan Tian Lang stupefied everybody in the crowd. Make the entire Yunhai sect join him or be destroyed. I knew it, said Nan Gongling with a sad smile on his face. When all these people had come, Nan Gongling had tried to guess why Chu Qing would also come along. Then, why the Yunhai sect? It's easy to guess, because the Yunhai sect is the weakest and the easiest to defeat from all of the great powers. You just have to let some of your best disciples of the sect leave to join me, then I may show mercy upon your sect. You're a liar, a soft voice said, spread in the air. It came from a lithe and graceful silhouette in the crowd which was slowly moving towards the fighting stage of the life and death arena. Her facial expression revealed intense and bitter hatred. Duan Tian Lang, you're lying. Lu Fei's beautiful cheeks suddenly seemed very pale. She was filled with anger and indignation. If you chose the Yunhai sect, Duan Tian Lang, it's because you are jealous of my father. You envy him. You envy his strength and talent. That is why you chose the Yunhai sect and plotted against it. You lied and made the Kai Shui armored horses come with me beforehand. All of this is because you want my father to suffer because you are jealous that you can never be his match. Lu Fei was filled with hatred and then she added coldly, Duan Tian Lang, you are shameless. You're disgusting. Many people were astonished when they heard Lu Fei's words. In the Yunhai sect, nobody knew exactly what Lu Fei's status really was or who her father was. From what Lu Fei was saying, it seemed that her father had a really high position within the country, especially if amazing and famous cultivators such as Duan Tian Lang envied him. Besides, what were the Kai Shui armored horses? They were the private troops of Lu Fei's father? The divine arrow, Lu Kang Lan. Many people said that together. In the Shui Yu country, it was said that there was a man even more glorious and famous than Duan Tian Lang. That man could only be Lu Kang Lan and his divine arrow. At some point, Lu Kang Lan was the leader of a huge army composed of thousands of cultivators and they had saved a city from destruction. They had killed tens of thousands of enemy troops. An arrow on his back, one man he had led an entire army on his own. He had killed a huge amount of enemy soldiers and when he had come back, he was covered with blood and fell into a coma. The divine arrow was a symbol of the Shui Yu country. Besides, the Kai Shui armored horses made enemies panic-stricken and terrified. What made everybody proud was that Lu Kang Lan was a member of the Yunhai sect and even though he had been helping the imperial clan, he had always been loyal to the Yunhai sect and had always been proud of being one of its members. Lu Fei's family name was Lu. Many people would adore her even more for that. Fei, how can you even possibly think that way of Uncle Duan Tian Lang? Your father and I are bosom friends. We're like brothers. How could I be jealous of him? Duan Tian Lang was shaking his head and smiling. He was looking at Lu Fei with eyes full of affection. That made everyone feel even more scared. Lu Fei's father and he were bosom friends? Nan Gongling thought that Duan Tian Lang was being extremely treacherous. It made him want to vomit. You and my father are bosom friends, like brothers? Yet you want to exterminate the Yunhai sect and all of my father's friends and fellow members? Lu Fei's eyes, which were filled with disgust, were staring deeply at Duan Tian Lang. Fei, that is what His Majesty wants. If I exterminate the Yunhai sect, it will be only because His Majesty has ordered it. This is nothing personal. The Yunhai sect of today is not the Yunhai sect of tomorrow. What it wants to do now would just be hindering some disciples' progress, especially the geniuses. Leaving would be a great opportunity for them to learn and benefit from the best resources available. Besides, I firmly believe that they will all be pleased. If you don't believe me, just come and look. Duan Tian Lang had a smile on the corner of his mouth. He turned around and looked at the entire crowd. His facial expression became ice cold. What I said was all true. Ranked disciples, who are willing to leave the Yunhai sect, please immediately move over there to the Kai Shui armored horses. Please remember that you don't have much time. The entire crowd suddenly became very agitated. A lot of people were looking at Nan Gongling and the elders of the sect. Those who are willing to leave, please go already. Don't stay within my Yunhai sect. Protector Bei had suddenly said that while waving his hand. Protector Bei. Nan Gongling was looking at Protector Bei as if he couldn't understand what the old man meant. Patriarch, this is their own decision. Protector Bei looked sad as if his heart was broken. It was hard to abandon ranked disciples. They were all extremely talented. Besides, someday, they were likely to rise to even greater heights. What a pity. Alright, said Nan Gongling, who knew how sad Protector Bei felt. Therefore, he didn't refute and then nodded. Thank you, Patriarch and elders of the sect. Many people, when they saw Nan Gongling nod, started moving towards the Kai Shui armored horses. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of disciples were moving towards the Kai Shui armored horses. Besides, the number of disciples moving towards the horses was way above the number of actually existing ranked disciples. Many unranked disciples were trying to pass themselves as one of the ranked disciples of the Yun Hai sect. Stop there. Duan Tianlang had a big smile on his face. Fei Fei, you see? These people understand that I'm giving them a great opportunity and they cherish and appreciate it. Therefore, they are happy to leave the Yun Hai sect for something better. Nan Gongling looked sad. He had the feeling that he was being abandoned by too many people. Lin Feng, you were right. When Yun Hai sect's disciples are weak, they are not treated well enough. We don't attach enough importance to them. Only when they become strong enough, we attach enough importance to them, for the glory of the sect. Nan Gongling was staring at Lin Feng. His voice was filled with sorrow. He hadn't realized these things until he saw all these disciples willing to leave. His heart was broken after watching all of the disciples who had wanted to leave. Hard times were the best moment to see who would remain loyal to the sect and who would attach no importance to it at all. Unfortunately, I found that out too late. If I had found that out 10 years earlier, maybe things would have been different. I would already have accomplished great things like Lu Kanglan. At that moment, Lin Feng was expressionless. He also wouldn't have thought that things would turn out this way. However, Lin Feng admired Nan Gongling. Nan Gongling cared about the Yun Hai sect more than himself. End of chapter 85. You are listening to Peerless Martial God audio on light novel Aloud. Chapter 86. Only option. For you, it's too late. For him, he still has a chance. If he wishes to go to the holy courtyard of Shui Yu, then we would welcome him with open arms. Duan Tianlang was looking at Nan Gongling and Lin Feng. He knew that Lin Feng was a real genius. In comparison to all of the other disciples of the Hao Yu sect and the Yun Hai sect, Lin Feng definitely stood at the top. He was such a talented disciple that he had to go to the holy courtyard of Shui Yu. Of course, there was still Wen Renyan as well. Even though he had been defeated by Lin Feng, he was still extremely strong, and his fighting style was indeed lethal. If Lin Feng hadn't been there, then Wen Renyan would have been the most outstanding disciple of the Yun Hai sect. Even if they destroy the Yun Hai sect, they will never kill Lin Feng. He's way too important. He's a unique genius who is only seen once. Lin Feng has a bright future with endless possibilities. Everybody was amazed by Lin Feng's talent and envied him. What did they have to do to be as respected by others as Lin Feng? Besides, it really seemed like the situation was as Lin Feng had described. In the Yun Hai sect, those who were weak were bullied and threatened. So, the Yun Hai sect had nothing to offer to those whose strength hasn't manifested itself yet. You two, you just have agreed to my terms and the doors of the holy courtyard of Shui Yu will open themselves for you. There is no need to repeat myself, but statement that the training conditions will be much better than in the Yun Hai sect as a fact. Duan Tianlang was looking directly at Lin Feng and Wen Renyan. That holy courtyard of Shui Yu again. Lin Feng thought about the fact that Lu Fei had already solicited him a few times and wanted him to join the holy courtyard of Shui Yu, but he still hadn't given his reply. He wouldn't have thought that somebody would ask him to go there again and in such a short period of time. He definitely never thought it would be under these conditions. Wen Renyan looked rigid, he then glanced at the old woman who was standing on his side and then at Duan Tianlang. He had an evil smile on his face. My teacher is great, and the Yun Hai sect respects me. Would it be right for me to leave? Thought Wen Renyan. The old woman had prevented Lin Feng from killing Wen Renyan. Wen Renyan could finally repay all of the things she had done for him. Wen Renyan is extremely strong and there is no doubt to his talent. Staying here would just be a waste of his talent. He should definitely go. Even though he was defeated by Lin Feng, there is nothing to be ashamed when comparing such geniuses. The whole crowd was looking at Wen Renyan, who was furiously looking at Duan Tianlang. The history of the Yun Hai sect dates back 1,000 years and you want to destroy it in the blink of an eye. How tragic, how pitiful. The Yun Hai sect. While saying this, Wen Renyan had released his blue bamboo beast spirit. At full speed, he launched himself at Duan Tianlang while shouting loudly. The Yun Hai sects will live on through me. I will become stronger than anyone within the sect has before. When he finished his sentence, Wen Renyan had already landed next to Duan Tianlang while looking as evil as always. The entire crowd was surprised. They didn't know what Wen Renyan was doing and they only saw an evil look in his eyes. He was going to betray the sect and join the holy courtyard of Shui Yu. What a shameless person. He really doesn't care about losing face. How can the sect create such disgusting and shameless person? Many disciples and elders were cursing at him. Duan Tianlang paused and then said while smiling, a wise man submits to circumstances. Wen Renyan, do not worry because in the future you will never be forced into such a sorry state. Evil little monster. The old woman looked furious and released an extremely cold chi and then she rushed towards Wen Renyan. At the moment when the old woman was passing next to Duan Tianlang, he swung down towards her using his gigantic sword. A loud thunderous impact spread through the life and death arena. The body of the old woman was thrown back to where she was initially standing, and she couldn't help but feel a sensation of fear fill her heart. Teacher, don't worry. In the future, I will become much stronger than you ever could. I will never disappoint you. Wen Renyan was looking at his teacher with eyes filled with arrogance. The old woman who was forcefully repressing her injuries could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood after hearing these words. It had been a long time since she had seen the sight of her own blood. Don't be impatient. Duan Tianlang was staring at the old woman while watching her movements closely and then looked at Lin Feng and said, "What about you? Will you accept my offer like Wen Renyan? The Yunhai sect has made you suffer greatly, is there even any reason for you to give it face?" Lin Feng looked at Duan Tianlang with a calm look as if everything that had happened did not affect him in any way. It was impossible to remove the serenity covering Lin Feng's face. Everybody in the crowd was staring at Lin Feng while impatient to hear his answer. Lin Feng, he's right. The Yunhai sect has made you suffer so much. You should go with him. I will not try to prevent you from leaving. Nobody in the Yunhai sect will blame you for leaving after everything that has happened. Nan Gongling had spoken these words as he stood motionless on the viewing platform. Wen Renyan had accepted, so it would be normal for Lin Feng. Wen Renyan had been treated completely differently to Lin Feng. He had received a lot of attention from the sect at the beginning. He had been protected, admired and respected by all of the elders. He had also become the direct disciple of a powerful teacher. Lin Feng was different. He owed nothing to the Yunhai sect. Nan Gongling hoped from the bottom of his heart that Lin Feng would stay, but he also could blame him if he wanted to leave because he had no reason to stay. Even if Lin Feng accepted Duan Tianlang's proposition, Nan Gongling wouldn't blame him, but he would definitely be depressed. You were asking Wen Renyan and me at the same time. Do you think that I would reply positively knowing that he might go as well? Said Lin Feng with a cold tone. Lin Feng's reply stupefied Wen Renyan. Wen Renyan could not suppress the hatred which had appeared on his face when he heard the words from Lin Feng's mouth. In this world, enemies cannot be enemies forever. Even if you hate him, I will give you both the same chance to join the holy courtyard of Shuiyu and the possibility to advance your cultivation in such an amazing environment, where you will receive the best resources. In few years, you can kill him if that is your wish. I will stay out of personal grudges. All that matters is if you have the strength to achieve your goal. No, said Lin Feng while shaking his head, if you have me then you don't have him, if you have him then you don't have me. Lin Feng was strict with his words which made Duan Tianlang frown. What do you want then? Said Duan Tianlang. I want to kill him, right now. Lin Feng's ruthless words had surprised Wen Renyan, that bastard. Are there no other solutions? Asked Duan Tianlang. No other solution will ease my anger. This is the only option. Replied Lin Feng. Duan Tianlang was surprised and after a small moment said, all right. But first, you have to promise that you will join us. Once you have joined our side and agreed to my offer, then I will kill him where he stands. Boom. Wen Renyan had the impression that a bomb had detonated in his brain. Lin Feng just had to agree for Duan Tianlang to kill him? He was betraying the sect which had nurtured him, and what was going to happen in the end? How ridiculous. Everybody watching felt a cold shiver run down their spines. Surprisingly, Duan Tianlang attached so much importance to Lin Feng that he suddenly was ready to kill Wen Renyan to make Lin Feng join them. It looked like Wen Renyan was going to die a miserable death. No, you must kill him first. Replied Lin Feng, shaking his head as firm as before. If I kill him, will you go back in your promise? Said Duan Tianlang while shaking his head as well. Are you trying to use me? Lin Feng smiled when he heard Duan Tianlang's words. You are very smart, but you are also very heartless. You are good at manipulating others to your will. I don't like those types of people. So do you mean that you were refusing my offer? Said Duan Tianlang in a slightly angry tone. Indeed, said Lin Feng as he indifferently nodded, which made everyone watching astonished. Lin Feng had surprisingly refused to go to the holy courtyard of Shuiyu. He had even tried to trick Duan Tianlang into killing Wen Renyan. Everybody was looking at Lin Feng with a perplexed expression. Nobody understood why Lin Feng would act in such a way. Wen Renyan, did you see? You are a piece of trash. When you are not needed anymore, nobody will hesitate to throw you away. Even if you stay alive, you are doomed to forever live in my shadow. Lin Feng's words were like sharp blades which cut Wen Renyan's pride into tiny little pieces. His arrogance and pride had just been crushed. He would never forget this moment. That's right. Lin Feng just had to nod once, and Wen Renyan would be killed. How laughable was his situation. That's enough, said Duan Tianlang, who was now in a bad mood after being used. Staring at Lin Feng, he said, I admire your courage, but could you give me your reason for refusing my offer? Duan Tianlang thought that Lin Feng hated the Yunhai sect because of everything that he had said. He could easily kill Wen Renyan at any time if it would convince Lin Feng to join them. Even though the Yunhai sect itself doesn't mean much to me, I have a debt of gratitude owed for Protector Bei's recognition and appreciation. He cares about me deeply and has continued to protect me. Besides, in the Yunhai sect, I have friends who are like brothers to me. How could I ever abandon them for worldly items? Lin Feng still had a very calm look on his face. He then added with an indifferent tone, I, Lin Feng, have my own talents and my loyalty cannot be bought. His voice wasn't loud, but everybody heard and understood him clearly. Protector Bei cares about me. How could I ever abandon them for worldly items? These were sentences that the entire crowd of disciples would never forget, just like the sound which came from the drums on the precipice of abyss. This would be something which they would never forget in their lifetime. Although they sounded like simple words, it was not something that just anyone could have said under these circumstances. At that moment, many people thought of Protector Bei and realized how important he was to the sect. Protector Bei was really proud of two things in his life. The first one was that he had accepted Liu Kanglan as his student, and the second was Lin Feng. That young disciple's words had profoundly touched him. Protector Bei, you don't make mistakes. I have eyes, but I did not recognize Mount Tai, and now I realize that we have such a wonderful disciple within the sect. Nan Gongling could not help but praise Protector Bei and scold himself. The old woman was also looking at Protector Bei and said, "You have a much better eye than I do." "I'll remember our agreement, don't worry," said Protector Bei while nodding, which made a bunch of people curious. They were all wondering what these two protectors were talking about. People could hear about their agreement but still didn't know what they were talking about. At that moment, Duan Tianlang had a furious look on his face. End of chapter 86. Chapter 87. Cold-blooded. To be honest, I am surprised by your decision. Duan Tianlang had a cold smile on the corner of his mouth as he stared at Lin Feng. You are a genius. I really appreciate your talent and battle ability. I offered you a great opportunity, but you are not willing to seize it. It is very important for you to understand that because you are a genius, you will not be treated like other people who refuse this opportunity. If you refuse, I will have no choice but to act rashly. I will not let you off, and I will not be able to let you continue living. If you refuse, you are doomed. Duan Tianlang suddenly filled with killing intent as a strong qi was released and shot towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng's expression didn't change from his usual calm expression. He obviously understood what Duan Tianlang meant, but he had already understood the consequences of his choices. Some decisions in life needed to be chosen carefully, as it could lead a person to their own death. Duan Tianlang, I will not allow you to touch him. At that moment, Lu Fei suddenly jumped in front of Lin Feng to prevent Duan Tianlang from attacking Lin Feng. She looked extremely furious at his actions. She had always thought that Lin Feng was a pervert with hidden intentions. She hadn't thought that Lin Feng could say such touching and moving things while his life was at stake. He had now shown his true character. Everything he had said so far had deeply moved Lu Fei. She had discovered a new aspect of his personality that she had never noticed before. Lin Feng was such a great talent that he couldn't die. It would be such a pity if he died here under these circumstances. At that moment, the situation was critical for the Yunhai sect. Lu Fei was using her own life to stand up for the sect and protect it. She had hoped that she could avoid the worst possible outcome. Fei, he must die. Duan Tianlang sounded really firm in his resolution. I will not allow you to touch him, said Lu Fei as she grew more and more furious. She stared at Duan Tianlang with evil eyes. Fei, why do you care so much about him? What does he mean to you? Duan Tianlang's son, Duan Han, was staring at Lin Feng. He had recognized him from their earlier encounter. On the day which he came to the Yunhai sect with Kai Xie armored cavalry, they had stopped because Lu Fei knew him. However, she had said they were only fellow disciples of the same sect and nothing more. But at that moment, Lu Fei was protecting Lin Feng with her life. Duan Han was troubled. He was a genius and had always hoped that Lu Fei would become his wife. Our relationship is none of your business, Lu Fei said while intensely staring at Duan Han. Then she glanced at all the Kai Xie armored cavalry and sighed. You should all listen to me. I don't care about who you are, your status, or even whose orders you are acting upon. I will not allow you to touch him, otherwise I will inform my father and his army will come to take care of you. Duan Han's face looked extremely ugly at that moment. He then said in an extremely cold tone, Fei, do you like this young man? It's none of your business, said Lu Fei furiously. Whom she liked was none of Duan Han's business. Duan Han was stupefied. His expression changed from shock to a face which resembled an evil demon. He then said in an ice-cold tone, Alright, now there is a second reason for him to die. Lin Feng, you're always saying long and righteous words. What the hell are you doing now hiding behind that girl? Lin Feng was smiling wryly. Lu Fei was always protecting him. Lin Feng moved in front of Lu Fei, took her hand and whispered, You're my girlfriend, how could I let you protect me? Lu Fei looked embarrassed, but a smile had appeared on her face. That bastard, when had he learnt to be a gentleman? But Duan Han's face became even uglier as he shouted, Your girlfriend? What gives you the right to say that Lu Fei is your girlfriend? Lin Feng, do you dare to come and fight with me? Lin Feng, don't, said Lu Fei with a hint of worry. Lu Fei pulled on Lin Feng's sleeve to stop him. She clearly knows how strong Duan Han was. His power was even more frightening than that of Wen Renyan. His sword was infinitely more powerful than what Lin Feng had displayed earlier. But how could Lin Feng retreat now? Don't you dare, laughed Duan Han. Lin Feng moved towards Duan Han. Duan Han was about 18 years old. Even if he was extremely strong, there was no reason for Lin Feng not to be able to fight against him. Alright, snorted Duan Han. He had an evil covering his face. As he held his sword, a great quantity of sword chi emerged and was released in the atmosphere. That sword chi was getting more and more intense while it violently whistled through the atmosphere. Slowly it started to gather another power. Sword force. The entire crowd was stupefied. That was sword force which he was using. Duan Tianlang's son, Duan Han, was using the same force as Lin Feng. The sword force he was releasing was cutting through the atmosphere and filling the entire arena. The chi from his sword was even stronger than that of Lin Feng, but Lin Feng's sword force was much more powerful than that of Duan Han. Lin Feng was surprised. He unsheathed his sword and just like Duan Han, he released his sword force. Swordmaster doesn't necessarily need to use his sword, pay attention, said Duan Han. Suddenly, Duan Han moved his hand and it seemed like his sword chi was suddenly mixing with the chi contained within the earth and the heavens. His sword was glowing as chi circulating in and out of his sword. The crowd was stupefied. It looked like pure chi was being released from his sword. How could Duan Han be so monstrously powerful? It had to be a skill, an extremely strong and powerful skill. Sword. Duan Han shouted loudly. An extremely powerful yet pure chi was emerging out from the palm of his hand while emitting a radiant light. The sword chi in the air took the shape of a sword and looked like it was aiming directly at Lin Feng. At that moment, all the sword chi and sword force had combined, and was starting to pressure Lin Feng's body. The energy sword thrust itself towards Lin Feng at incredible speed. Lin Feng could dodge but had to be careful as by dodging the sword created from energy, he would be open to other attacks. Duan Han was a genius swordmaster. He had learned and practiced many sword skills. Lin Feng had no choice but to recognize that Duan Han was a swordmaster. Lin Feng didn't think that way about all the sword users he had met before, even if they had a sword spirit, however Duan Han was different. Deadly sword. When Lin Feng saw all the combined sword energy, he grabbed his long sword and released an incredible amount of chi to block the incoming energy sword. An incredibly huge amount of sword chi started to cover the entire arena. However, it seemed like Lin Feng's sword chi was unable to compete with the sword energy which was released by Duan Han. How powerful! His pupils started to dilate. At that moment, he could already feel the sword energy released by Duan Han growing closer, which suddenly made Lin Feng feel imminent danger. He could not help but groan as he was in a dangerous situation. But the most terrifying thing was the sword energy which continued to thrust at Lin Feng. Boom! Lin Feng was projected back several steps and blood started to drip from the corner of his mouth. A bright red blood was dripping down his chin. Lin Feng's robes were ragged, and his body was riddled with wounds. Lu Fei, who wasn't far behind him, ran straight towards him and offered her hand to help him stand. I'm alright, said Lin Feng indifferently while shaking his head. All the sword chi and sword force started to combine into another energy sword. Even though Lin Feng was defeated, he would still remain brave until the end. How powerful! He's not that much older than Wen Ren Yan, but he's much stronger. That's another genius, a genius swordmaster. The crowd was thinking all sorts of things. A swordmaster was extremely powerful, much more than expected. Do you see now? You cannot even withstand a single attack. We have nothing in common. You will forever be chasing my footprints. Duan Han was staring at Lin Feng and looked extremely cold. He then raised his hand and shouted, "Raise your bows." The loud shout spread throughout the entire atmosphere of the gorge, and then all the cavalry mounted on their Kai Xie armored horses raised their bows. They had filled the cliff at the top of the gorge completely. A terrifying chi filled the air above the life and death arena. I just have to speak once, and everybody will fire their bows. They will kill anyone with just a single word from me. How could you even think that you can compete with me? You may lower your bows. Duan Han had told them to lower their bows, and all the cavalry instantly lowered their bows. Your strength and my strength are not even comparable. You cannot master forces to the same level as me. What makes you think that you can be intimate with Lu Fei when I cannot? Duan Han said with an ice-cold tone. Duan Han, you are a shameless asshole, shouted Lu Fei furiously, cursing at Duan Han. If you are so strong now, it is because of the clan in which you grew up, which descends from the imperial family. You don't know what it is to lack great teachers and resources. Why are you doing this to Lin Feng? Besides, Lin Feng is an expert at learning martial skills and agility techniques. Haven't you noticed that his skills have the power of highest quality Zon level skills? He has gained everything by relying on his own power. Are you not ashamed to show off the power you gained from your clan in front of Lin Feng? All you have learned and all the power you have is because your family and because you have a high status. You have never had to rely on your talent. Do you even have any? You cannot deny, however, that I perfectly master all of these skills. You cannot deny that I am now an extremely strong cultivator. Lin Feng and I really have nothing in common, said Duan Han, disagreeing with Lu Fei. Even if that's the case, what's your problem? Don't forget that you are older than Lin Feng as well. In 2 years, he will be much stronger than you. You are pathetic and shameless. Lu Fei was shouting, and everyone was nodding in agreement with what she was saying. That's right. Everything that Lu Fei said to Duan Han was actually justified. Because Duan Han came from such a powerful family and had such a high status, that didn't mean he wasn't gifted or couldn't use forces properly. However, was he more gifted than Lin Feng? Lin Feng's background wasn't as good as Duan Han's. Lin Feng could only rely on himself to gain his power. If Lin Feng switched places with Duan Han, he would probably be many times stronger than him. Besides, Lin Feng was still very young. He was 2 years younger than Duan Han. 2 years was enough for Lin Feng to exceed Duan Han even without the same resources. Lin Feng was much more talented than Duan Han. No matter what you say, strength is strength, weakness is weakness. Today, he will die, said Duan Han furiously. Alright, we don't need you to get involved, Fei Fei. Sooner or later, you will become a member of my family, so come and stand next to me. Duan Tianlang had said that while looking at Lu Fei. It sounded like he was convinced that Lu Fei would someday become the wife to his son. In your dreams, I, Lu Fei, will never be a member of your family, screamed Lu Fei in disgust. Lu Fei, don't say such things in front of me. That's a great offense. Don't forget that the Duan family is also a part of the imperial clan. Duan Tianlang moved his arm. Immediately after, all the cavalry on their Kai-Xie armored horses once again raised the bows that they had just put down. End of chapter 87. Chapter 88. Extermination. Alright, that's enough for today. I am offering you a great opportunity, but you don't know how to appreciate it. Since you have decided to act this way, then. Duan Tianlang suddenly stopped speaking and then raised his hand. He waved his hand down as a signal, and then a storm of arrows began whistling through the air while releasing a strong qi. They're attacking. The whole crowd had now realized that they were in danger. After that, they saw Duan Tianlang wave his hand again and say the following words: total extermination. These 2 words resonated in everybody's mind as if the words were said by a terrifyingly evil god. Whistling sounds filled the entire atmosphere. What seemed like an endless shower of arrows was piercing through the atmosphere above the stormy gorge. However, no arrows were aimed at the stage of the life and death arena where Duan Tianlang was standing. This was the only location which was not a target for arrows. The whole crowd was looking at the arrows flying above their heads and were terrified. Most of them had already given up all hope of escaping alive. There were so many arrows, and each of them was as swift and powerful as a meteor crashing down from the heavens. The cavalry on the Kai-Xie armored horses were definitely incredibly powerful. Horrible shrieks could be heard and resonated through the entire gorge. Some of the Yunhai sect's disciples had been hit by arrows in the head, shoulders, chest and arms. Bright red blood was filling the gorge like an ocean. Only the strongest cultivators within the gorge had managed to avoid the arrows. It was already difficult to dodge the arrows, and this was also only the first wave of arrows. Nan Gongling was looking at the arrows flying above his head. He was still standing on the bleachers. Some arrows flew above his head, but he managed to disintegrate them into dust, which then continued flying past him. An immense sorrow could be seen in Nan Gongling's eyes while he was looking around at the current scene. He then closed his eyes because he couldn't stand seeing all his precious disciples being killed before his eyes. All these disciples admired him and worshipped him as the patriarch. In front of that spectacle, he felt absolutely powerless. The elders of the sect were feeling the same as they watched the bloody spectacle before them. They would have never expected that the Yunhai sect would ever go through such horrible hardships. This truly felt like a nightmare. They would never have expected the total extermination of the Yunhai sect would occur on this day. The first wave of arrows had finally come to an end. The blood from all the dead disciples created a small river of blood which was flowing through the gorge, which was drowned in silence. Lin Feng, who was standing inside the life and death arena, was calmly looking at the blood flowing through the gorge. The sunlight was shining down on his skin, yet he didn't feel any warmth at all. He just felt an endless coldness running through his veins. In the stormy gorge, some people had entered death's embrace while some others were still struggling against death even in their last moments. Those who were about to die were crying tears of regret while staring at the heavens and screaming in pain. If this was the previous world, there were many disciples who were still very young and would have still been going to school. They had parents, brothers and sisters. Their future was still filled with endless possibilities. They had come to the Yunhai sect to become stronger and to receive an education in cultivation. They had come hoping to improve their lives and allow their families to have better living conditions. But after Duan Tianlang's voice resonated in the atmosphere, their future of endless possibilities had turned to dust. Death was already here for them and their bodies were already floating within a sea of blood. Lin Feng's heart had never felt so cold. He felt so cold that he had the feeling his heart was losing blood through stab wounds. These young disciples were just like him, made of blood and flesh. They still had a long life before them. Many of these young disciples had done nothing wrong and were just trying to improve their family's well-being. Lin Feng took a long and deep breath of the desolation before him. He then looked closely at a thicker artery of that bright red river of blood with his eyes wide open and had the feeling that he was drowning in an endless pit of sorrow. The strong cultivators could steal the future which belonged to the weaker people of this world. They could slaughter them and exterminate them as they would do to bugs. That was the cruel and sad reality of this world. Those who were not powerful were like insects to be crushed by those stronger cultivators. Fire. Duan Tianlang's voice spread throughout the atmosphere again, making the stones of the gorge tremble. Sharp and deadly arrows started piercing through the air again like evil spirits falling from the sky. Horrible shrieks spread throughout the atmosphere. There was nothing to be done though. The ordinary disciples who were particularly vulnerable could only stare on in despair. A horrible shout filled with pain and agony filled the gorge. Lu Fei was kneeling down on the ground looking at the corpses while grabbing her beautiful long hair with such power that it ripped some from her head. Her delicate cheeks no longer had a rosy complexion and she stared on lifelessly. The ones killing these people were the cavalry on the Kai Xie armored horses, her father's own army. Those who were being killed were the Yun Hai sect's disciples. They were her fellow disciples but also her father's fellow disciples. She, like many others, could only stand there and watch the slaughter with broken hearts while unable to prevent the massacre from happening. Duan Han, bring her over here, Duan Tianlang had said with a cold tone while looking at Lu Fei. Duan Han slightly nodded and moved towards Lu Fei. But at that moment, an extremely quick and agile silhouette quickly landed in front of Lu Fei. It was Lin Feng. Get lost. If you want to die, don't worry, it's only a matter of time, Duan Han said while looking expressionless. But Lin Feng seemed like he hadn't heard Duan Han's words. He was only staring at him with his pitch-black eyes. He was looking at Duan Han with a cold and calm expression. How ruthless would someone need to be to remain calm while thousands of people had been and were being slaughtered? Duan Han frowned and looked at Lin Feng's eyes, which looked incredibly evil. These cold and evil eyes suddenly made Duan Han shiver. Since you want to die right now, I will finish you off, Duan Han shouted while his face twisted in anger. He was furious because he had shivered from fear while in front of Lin Feng, and Duan Han felt humiliated. Even though he didn't deny the fact that Lin Feng was a genius with incredible talent, he still thought that Lin Feng had no right to humiliate him because he was just a nobody from no-name clan. The sight of Lin Feng and Lu Fei caring for each other made him especially furious. He wanted Lin Feng to kneel down at his feet. He wanted to show Lu Fei that Lin Feng was a weakling and a nobody. He could never compare with the majestic blood which ran through his veins. Duan Han's sword started to glow. He had a sword spirit and had been learning sword skills since he was a child. Swords had almost no secrets from him. His sword skills were so advanced that he didn't even need a sword in order to use his sword skills. In his hands, almost anything could become a sword. An extremely powerful sword chi emerged from the palm of his hand and created a strong wind moving towards Lin Feng. Duan Han wasn't using any specific skill. He wanted to show Lu Fei that he was extremely powerful and could kill Lin Feng with a simple wave of his palm. Pierce. Lin Feng's body moved gracefully towards the attack. He grabbed his sword and pierced towards Duan Han's sword chi, aiming exactly at its weakest point. Duan Han immediately understood. He perfectly understood that the chi that he was using had taken form. It was very clear to him which part of it was stronger and which part was weaker. Duan Han's sword chi vanished in an instant. Lin Feng's sword, which was filled with a deadly chi, was still moving towards Duan Han at an incredible speed. Duan Han was surprised but reacted quickly. He raised his right hand and released a strong chi which shot towards Lin Feng's sword with a whistling sound. However, this chi still wasn't enough to stop the attack. The sword which was rushing toward him did not even slightly slow down. The sword was still filled with a deadly chi which smelt like death and destruction. Duan Han frowned. He was a cultivator of the fourth Ling Chi layer. He was much stronger than Lin Feng, but why did Lin Feng's sword give him such a bad premonition? Duan Han raised both his hands to stop the extremely powerful deadly chi, but it didn't work. His body was projected backwards by Lin Feng's powerful attack. Die, Lin Feng said with a calm and ruthless tone. The chi from his long sword was giving the feeling that death itself was contained within the sword. His sword force was also emerging endlessly from his long sword. The chi and force emerging out of Lin Feng's sword looked so natural, as if it was absorbed directly from the power of heaven and earth. How is that possible? Duan Han stared onwards and could not believe his eyes. The sword force, that sword, everything had merged into perfect harmony. Even with his years of training, he was unable to perform such a feat. That sword was as fast as lightning, and its power was incredible. Duan Han had absolutely no time to counter an attack with such power. He had no choice but to dodge. He's probably using his sword of nirvana. Being able to keep up that power even during a second attack is really incredible. Lin Feng is a genius when it comes to learning skills. His power is really terrifying. He will definitely not die today. Protector Bei's attention had been on Lin Feng from the beginning. Everybody in the Yun Hai sect could die except for Lin Feng. Protector Bei wasn't being cruel or merciless when thinking that everybody could die except for Lin Feng. He just thought that if only one person survived, it had to be Lin Feng because he was the only hope of a future that the sect had. Protector Bei even thought that if he had to die, it wouldn't be a problem as long as Lin Feng stayed alive. Shadow steps, Duan Han started moving at full speed. His entire body looked like a shadow while it tried to escape Lin Feng's deadly sword. He then stopped and looked at his clothes. They were torn and ragged from almost taking that previous attack. When he saw that, his face changed, and he looked hideously evil. Lin Feng had surprisingly almost injured him and had managed to tear his clothes. If he had been a single step slower, then that deadly sword would have directly pierced into his chest. Duan Han could only feel extraordinary shame and humiliation. He, who had broken through to the fourth Ling Qi layer, had suddenly almost been injured by Lin Feng, who had only broken through to the second Ling Qi layer. Just like a moment ago, he had been humiliated by Lin Feng again. You are very lucky, but now I will have to get serious. Duan Han was trying to hide his anger and remain calm. He was, of course, not going to admit that he had almost been injured by Lin Feng because of his own arrogance. He would rather attribute it to Lin Feng's luck. You have broken through to the fourth Ling Qi layer. I have broken through to the second Ling Qi layer. You are apparently extremely strong, and apparently, I'm not even worth the effort of fighting. Yet I almost injured you, and then you attribute it to luck. I see you must not have been serious when you just ran away with your tail between your legs. Duan Han, don't you think that you are shameless pretending to this extent? Lin Feng had a smile on the corner of his mouth. His pitch-black eyes were radiating killing intent. His words were ridiculing Duan Han. End of chapter 88. Chapter 89. A lonely sword. How can you be so shameless here? Lu Fei had moved closer to Lin Feng. She was looking at Duan Han with an icy stare. Her eyes were filled with hatred and contempt. Duan Tianlang and his son had destroyed the Yun Hai sect. She would make sure that these two disgusting people were going to regret it for their entire life. When Duan Han heard that Lu Fei was insulting him, his face looked really ugly. Duan Han had always thought that Lu Fei would become his wife, and seeing his future wife insult him and protect another man had made him furious. I am shameless? That piece of trash is not even able to defeat me, and I am shameless? Said Duan Han while coldly looking at Lin Feng, and then said, Fei Fei, I will show you the gigantic gap that exists between him and me. The difference is way too big. I am at the second Ling Qi layer and you are the fourth Ling Qi layer. You are obviously very strong, but bragging in front of me can definitely be described as being shameless. Said Lin Feng, who wasn't scared of Duan Han in the slightest. He then added, if you are brave enough, then try and attack me. I will just show you that I don't even need to move from where I stand to defeat you. Shouted Duan Han. Duan Han was furious because of Lin Feng's sharp tongue. He stood in the same position while waiting for Lin Feng to make the first move. Lin Feng's dark eyes revealed a slightly happy expression for a second. Lin Feng suddenly closed his eyes and had a feeling of absolute peace and serenity. He felt at peace in this world made of darkness. The loudest noise would not have been able to disturb Lin Feng at that moment. In Lin Feng's mind, there was only a dark world filled with coldness and the smell of death. Lin Feng had the feeling that there was no sword chi existing in this world, and the life and death arena was absolutely calm inside this world of darkness. At that moment, a grayish-black shadow emerged out of Lin Feng's sword, slowly filling the atmosphere. It looked like the shadow of death, which had come to claim the dead. Death is cold. Death is dark. Death is here. Lin Feng opened his eyes, and they were filled with an indescribable darkness which made him look even more heartless than before. Lin Feng started moving, and the grayish-black chi which was emerging out from his long sword started to follow him. His sword looked like it could annihilate all of the 10,000 things within creation. He then began another strike using the skill sword of Nirvana. Lonely sword. The force diffused by the sword was much weaker than before. The chi didn't make whistling sounds as it pierced through the air. The sword this time seemed lonely and silent. The sword carried the smell of death, as if it was going to annihilate everything within the world to make itself the only thing remaining, a lonely sword. Duan Han's face drastically changed. It was as if he understood the danger of the sword which was in Lin Feng's hand. He was surrounded by such a terrifying energy which smelt like death and battle, he could not help but tremble in fear. Celestial propulsion. Duan Han used a high-quality skill of the Zan level. An extremely powerful essence appeared in front Duan Han's body while he started to retreat. A small sound was heard. The lonely sword had the power to annihilate all things within creation. Even Duan Han's high-quality Zan level technique had vanished when it touched the energy emitted by Lin Feng's sword. Get lost. At that moment, a loud shout spread throughout the atmosphere. A dazzling sword broke the chi from the lonely sword. Lin Feng's body was projected back like a leaf in the wind, but the attack eventually reached its destination and Lin Feng coughed out several mouthfuls of blood. The one who had attacked was Duan Tianlang. His face had grown extremely cold. He looked like he was ready to murder Lin Feng on the spot. Swordmasters were in perfect fusion with their swords to the extent that they could exchange energy with each other. This was called Unity Force. Unity Force enabled swordmasters to move but powered by the sword force granted by their swords. It also enabled them to carry out even stronger and more powerful attacks which no longer relied on chi. Only real geniuses could learn to master their force to such an extent. They would need to be at a minimum of the Ling Qi layer to use Unity Force. However, the force was much more efficient and powerful when cultivators had broken through to the 5th or 6th Ling Qi layer before using it. Duan Han, Duan Tianlang's son, at the moment when he had broken through to the 3rd Ling Qi layer had learned how to use Unity Forces. He was a real genius. The sword chi and sword force released when using Unity Force is not easily dispersed. Unity force was thickly condensed with power and several times stronger than normal forces. Only swordmasters who were geniuses could comprehend the power behind Unity force before having reached the Zan Qi layer. Lin Feng, who had only broken through to the second Ling Qi layer, had managed to trick Duan Han. Lin Feng had started using Unity force a moment ago, but he couldn't control it, which is why Duan Tianlang had time to interrupt his attack. At that moment, Lin Feng had blood spilling out of the corner of his mouth, but his dark eyes were still revealing a happy expression. Father and son fighting together against a single disciple. We really do have nothing in common. I could never be that shameless. Lin Feng's words were so sharp that Duan Han had the feeling he was being stabbed through the heart. You shut the hell up, said Duan Han, extremely furious, which made him look like a demon. He hated Lin Feng from the bottom of his heart. Duan Han, what's the point in arguing with someone who is already dead? Duan Tianlang had said that in a loud yet indifferent voice and then started moving straight towards Lin Feng. Duan Tianlang, attacking junior disciples is really the worst thing a wise senior cultivator could do. You are a worthless person. Nan Gongling and a few elders fell from the sky and landed in the life and death arena just in front of Lin Feng. Duan Tianlang stepped forward, however, when he saw all the elders who were accompanying Nan Gongling, he hesitated. Suddenly, an extremely powerful qi filled with the atmosphere and the sky looked like it was going to collapse under the pressure. We will slowly kill these old guys over time, but first we must kill Lin Feng. Duan Tianlang had said this with a neutral tone, as if he had said nothing special. He had brought along some outstanding cultivators to support him and did not fear the power of the Yunhai sect, the patriarch of the Haoyu sect, the patriarch of the Ice and Snow Village Mountain, as well as the one of the Mo Shou sect. They were all monstrously powerful cultivators in their own right. They had also brought along their elders and disciples as support. They were a much stronger fighting force than the Yunhai sect. At this time, their goal was to annihilate the Yunhai sect, take everything that belonged to them and then share it equally between them. That was actually one of the reasons why Duan Tianlang had managed to convince all these patriarchs to join him and help him get outstanding disciples to send them to the holy courtyard of Shuiyu. There were many things to take from the Yunhai sect: amazing treasures, profound skills and agility techniques, as well as these outstanding young disciples. Kai Xie armored cavalry troops, slaughter them all. Duan Tianlang made a wave of his hand. Immediately the cavalry on the Kai Xie armored horses started galloping towards the inside of the gorge. Duan Tianlang, I am the patriarch of the Yunhai sect. If you want to destroy it, then you will need to fight against me. Nan Gongling started moving with extreme speed, and a gigantic qi which contained elements of force shot straight towards Duan Tianlang. Why would I be scared? Said Duan Tianlang while smiling coldly, and then, his body immediately rose into the air. Nan Gongling followed him into the air. High up in the air, Duan Tianlang's sword started glowing and he tried to attack Nan Gongling with an extremely powerful sneak attack. Boom! The gigantic pythonfish had its wings wide open, and the patriarch of the Mo Shou sect was sitting atop it looking evil. The eyes of the beast were extremely terrifying. How evil! Protector Bei released his crane spirit, then it flew up at the speed of lightning and threw itself at the flying pythonfish. Everybody else was choosing an opponent and a large-scale battle began to take place. It was a huge battlefield filled with blood and power. It was like a hurricane was moving from place to place and leaving behind destruction and bodies. On the ground, in the air, no matter where it was within the stormy gorge, there were battles taking place. The fighting stage of the life and death arena was shaking so much that it looked like it was going to collapse under the pressure. Lin Feng's pitch-black eyes were looking around at the huge battle. Lin Feng had the feeling that the patriarch, Protector Bei, and these elders of the sect were fighting for him. Lin Feng would have never thought that these people would try to annihilate the Yunhai sect. He especially never thought that so many people would fight for him. An extremely cold feeling invaded his heart like a waterfall of ice. Lin Feng felt a sudden sense of belonging within the Yunhai sect. People were fighting for him. They were risking their lives to protect him. Nan Gongling, Protector Bei, as well as other elders were very powerful. They might have the power to win this battle or scare the opponent from the fight without risking their lives. Nothing was certain, but at least there was still some hope to be found. However, they were all fighting with their life on the line because of him, a disciple of the Yunhai sect. The Yunhai sect. Lin Feng whispered the name of the sect while looking at the sunlight that was shining down on the river of blood. Lin Feng. At that moment, a voice spread throughout the atmosphere. Lin Feng turned around and was surprised. He only saw someone with a cold look who was moving towards the fighting stage. The eyes of this person looked like they were ready to murder. It was Mo Xie, filthy animal. Lin Feng saw Mo Xie's cold smile getting clearer and clearer as Mo Xie was approaching him. In such a horrible and desperate situation, Mo Xie, who was an elder, wasn't fighting for the Yunhai sect but was moving towards Lin Feng to settle personal grudges. In that chaotic and apocalyptic situation, Mo Xie had decided he would use the opportunity to kill Lin Feng. Why would you kill me now? What's the point? Wouldn't it be better to try surviving now? Lin Feng was looking at Mo Xie, who was moving towards him with a cold, murderous look. Well, Do you think that if I hand you over to Duan Tianlang, he will still want to kill me? In such circumstances, I will not need to struggle to survive and can live comfortably. Mo Xie had a particularly evil smile on the corner of his mouth. Lin Feng was astonished to hear such shameless words leave the mouth of an elder. It was already impossible to be more shameless and despicable than Mo Xie. I really admire you. Being so incredibly shameless and on top of that being able to smile with happiness while you watch your sect be destroyed. Said Lin Feng. Why? Why not just consider winners to be great and losers to be trash? Losers in my eyes are always in the wrong. Duan Tianlang is powerful, and if he wants to annihilate the Yun Hai sect, then it is useless to go against his will. Those risking their lives for the Yun Hai sect right now are stupid and ignorant losers. Not only was Mo Xie cruel and heartless, but he also sounded extremely arrogant. It really seemed like he had no values at all. Since it's like that, come, I will end your pitiful life. These words had come directly from Lin Feng's heart. It seemed easier said than done, but Lin Feng already looked like he was ready to kill Mo Xie. Mo Xie frowned and suspiciously stared at Lin Feng. A second later, Mo Xie looked relaxed again as if he was worrying for no reason. Even though Lin Feng was a genius, it was impossible for him to kill Mo Xie. Such a pity. I will kill you like an insect between my 2 fingers. I will make you die slowly and painfully. Mo Xie released his bow of vine spirit and immediately vines emerged beneath Lin Feng's feet. Mo Xie was attacking Lin Feng with a surprise attack even though they greatly differed in power. Lin Feng was suddenly wrapped up in the vines from the sudden attack. Surprisingly, Lin Feng was not attempting to resist. Mo Xie hadn't noticed that Lin Feng had a smile on his face. It looks like you have already given up. Don't worry, I will kill you very slowly and use your head as a trophy. Said Mo Xie while looking extremely cruel. At that moment, a shadow was climbing up Mo Xie's body. That shadow was intangible. It was almost invisible and did not look like something that should exist within this world. Is that so? Suddenly, Mo Xie stopped moving. His body was no longer under his control. He shivered from head to toe in fear. It's him. Mo Xie would never forget that day when that black shadow had completely oppressed him. At that moment, there was a shadow that was preventing him from moving. End of chapter 89. Chapter 90. Sorrow and Tragedy. Lin Feng, you already knew about this, right? Mo Xie had the feeling that his body was completely frozen. He was unable to move. Lin Feng, a moment before, hadn't dodged his attack, but he had allowed himself to be attacked willingly. But that shadow hadn't appeared since the last time, so how could Lin Feng have any idea that it would appear? Elder. Mo Xie said that to the shadow but didn't dare try to move. He was scared because his life could end in a single moment. The sect has such degenerate elders like you remaining, this is such a disgrace. The voice came out of nowhere. Suddenly, a dark green light flashed through the air with incredible speed. No silhouette was seen, only a light as it flashed through the air. When the light vanished, the silhouette had finally appeared. This person was wearing a black cloak which seemed to hide part of his face. Suddenly, the silhouette took out a dagger which had bright red blood dripping from the tip. That blood was obviously Mo Xie's. Mo Xie was still standing at the same place as a moment before and was still completely motionless. His eyes were wide open as if he couldn't believe his eyes. He still could not believe that within that split second that elder had ended all his chances of life in this world. Blood suddenly started spilling out from his throat and his body collapsed heavily onto the ground. I would have never thought that, someday, I would use this dagger against an elder of the sect. How lamentable. The old man's voice sounded desolate. Protector Kong, said Lin Feng to the old man in the black cloak. So that's how it was. That shadow belonged to the old man who protected the precipice of the abyss. How did you know that I was here? Protector Kong looked at Lin Feng while nodding. When he used his shadow spirit, there was only a shadow. A moment ago, Protector Kong hadn't revealed that he had arrived, and yet Lin Feng had willingly lured Mo Xie into attacking him. Perception. Lin Feng replied calmly. His spirit enabled him to sense the world. He didn't need his eyes to observe it. He could sense and perceive all things in their movements. In Lin Feng's brain, that world of darkness was actually extremely clear, as if he was the creator of the darkness. Everything that surrounded him was known to him and appeared with total clarity. Even though Protector Kong had been using his shadow, Lin Feng had surprisingly been able to sense his presence. Lin Feng then understood that the shadow was the one that had protected him last time he had been attacked by Mo Xie. Protector Kong then nodded. Lin Feng, you are the most extraordinary young man that I have ever met. You are a true genius. Leave this place and go far away. Go as far as you can, and let's hope that someday, the Yun Hai sect will be reborn again. Protector Kong's voice was filled with sadness. He was a protector of the Yun Hai sect, and on that day, the sect which he was protecting was being exterminated. If I am alive, I will definitely bring the Yun Hai sect into the future. Lin Feng solemnly nodded as a sign that he was making a promise to the old man. However, he still had to get out of that massacre alive. Duan Tianlang would never let him off. In the sky, blood was raining down. Someone wearing dark clothes had been killed. It looked like an elder of the Yun Hai sect. Kong Ming, I've been waiting for you for a while. Then a silhouette fell from the sky and landed in front of Protector Kong. Protector Kong was speechless, and he was shaking in anger. His facial expression suddenly drastically changed, and he vanished in the blink of an eye. There was only his shadow remaining on the ground. At that moment, a silhouette in the sky was looking at the blood and then at Mo Xie's cadaver on the ground. That person's face was filled with hatred. Yun Hai sect, I have done so much for you and in the end, you end up killing my only son. How could you? Mo Kanglan had gone insane. He turned around and looked at Duan Tianlang and Nan Gongling who were fighting. Die, thought Mo Kanglan evilly. His silhouette then flashed through the atmosphere and landed next to Nan Gongling, and he wholeheartedly started fighting on Duan Tianlang's side against Nan Gongling. Nan Gongling didn't know that Mo Xie was dead, so he didn't understand what was happening. Mo Kanglan's attack projected Nan Gongling straight towards Duan Tianlang's sword. Suddenly, blood gushed out of Nan Gongling's left arm and mixed with the bright light released by the sword. Nan Gongling's left hand had been completely cut off by the sword. Mo Kanglan. Nan Gongling fell down onto the ground but didn't even look at his hand which had been cut off. Instead, he was staring at Mo Kanglan who had pushed him into the attack. Mo Kanglan, his friend and a great elder of the Yun Hai sect. This is my revenge, said Mo Kanglan coldly while looking at Mo Xie's corpse lying on the ground. Nan Gongling then noticed Mo Xie's corpse, and his own wound then at Protector Kong in the middle of a fight. Mo Xie had been killed by Protector Kong. Nan Gongling was obviously able to understand what had happened. It is good that he finally got what he deserved, Nan Gongling said while sounding indifferent. He then looked around him. He saw that many elders were in weak positions and that the opponents still had many people who hadn't even gotten involved in the fights yet. They were just there to prevent people from escaping. All the members of the Yun Hai sect, gather around me immediately. Nan Gongling had shouted these words very loudly, and suddenly, a multitude of people were coming from all sides towards the fighting stage of the life and death arena. More and more people stopped fighting against their current opponents. They left them behind and joined Nan Gongling on the highest fighting stage. Apart from Nan Gongling who had had his hand cut off, many other people were injured and covered with blood. Lin Feng was standing behind the crowd. He looked calm but his eyes were filled with sorrow in front of such a tragedy. Do you know what to do now? While blood was unceasingly spilling out of Nan Gongling's arm, he was fixedly staring at Duan Tianlang. Everybody in the crowd didn't need explanations. They all nodded as a sign that they had understood what Nan Gongling meant. Protector Bei, take him. Nan Gongling had said that to Protector Bei in a solemn tone. Protector Bei nodded solemnly. His crane spirit, amongst all the people who were present, was the strongest and the quickest of spirits. Immediately after, Protector Bei landed on Lin Feng's side. He released his spirit, spread his wings and grabbed Lin Feng. Lin Feng had finally understood what Nan Gongling meant, what they wanted. Everybody, including all of the elders, were staring at Lin Feng. All sorts of expressions could be seen on their faces, but a few of them revealed hope. Everybody was looking at Lin Feng with hope. Lin Feng was their only hope. Lin Feng had a big headache. He had the feeling that he had just received a mountain of pressure on his shoulders. These strong people wanted to give up their lives to make sure that Lin Feng escaped alive. They wanted to sacrifice themselves for him. All these lives to save a single life. Many of these people were strong enough that they might be able to survive if they attempted to escape alone. While there was no bond between Lin Feng and many of these people, they had all chosen to entrust the future to him. Because Lin Feng did not have strong ties to the sect, they did not know what he would do if he escaped alive, but they all still had relieved expressions as if they had done all that they could. The only one who wasn't looking at Lin Feng was Nan Gongling. He was observing the opponents. I, Lin Feng, have my own talents and my loyalty cannot be bought. How could he not have faith in the person who said these words? Nan Gongling had only thing in mind, let Lin Feng escape while they cleared a path for him. Go, Nan Gongling shouted extremely loudly. He then immediately jumped into the air again and prepared for battle. Everybody started moving at the same time as Nan Gongling. The sect is being destroyed under my reign. Yun Hai sect, please forgive me. I'm so sorry. An extremely powerful chi was released from Nan Gongling's body and he threw himself into battle to clear a path without hesitation. This was the greatest regret of his life, that in his time the Yun Hai sect had been reduced to such a sorry state. You will die. A loud shout filled the air and suddenly a glowing sword whistled in the air accompanied by multiple different attacks. Boom! Nan Gongling's body turned into nothing but ashes. The youngest patriarch in the history of the Yun Hai sect had perished. Nobody seemed to feel sorry for him or was crying loudly. All the elders of the Yun Hai sect were calmly looking at his dead body. They were being attacked from all sides as well as they distracted the enemies from chasing Lin Feng. This was not how things were supposed to be. Some elders were still trying to dodge the incoming attacks and to fight against the enemies of the sect. They didn't care about dying for the sect, but they were still hoping to survive long enough to kill their opponent. Die, 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 die. A strong wind was blowing over the arena. Each and every elder tried to survive as long as they could and fight sparing no effort while using their full strength. The opponents were only attacking and didn't even need to defend themselves. Each and every single of these elders was falling down under the various attacks. This was the last chance that they had to show their will and determination. Lin Feng was looking at them and didn't blink even once. All these people who were fighting to the death would turn their head around and have one last look at Lin Feng before they died. Let's go. Protector Bay finally started moving at full speed like a comet moving towards the horizon. The wings of the crane were creating whirlwinds as they flapped through the air. The power of these whirlwinds was painful to Lin Feng like blades striking his skin, but at this moment his heart was in even more pain. His fellow disciples, his friends and even those elders that owed him nothing, but they still gave their lives for him. They were all going to die while he would have to live on. Where do you think you are going? A loud voice spread throughout the atmosphere. It was just as incisive as ever. A dazzling sword appeared. It was the old man who was stood next to Duan Tian Lang. Piercing shadow, die. A loud voice spread throughout the atmosphere but seemed to come from nowhere. Only a dark green light flashed, but that light, everybody saw it. The possessor of a shadow spirit could kill without moving. He could pull out other people's souls out of their body and take their lives. How dare you? Shouted a voice extremely loudly. The shadow and the gigantic dazzling sword collided into each other. For a second, it seemed like they were both attempting to swallow the other. The old man was injured, and blood started to flow from his chest. At that moment, the shadow appeared while the arm and the dagger had disappeared from sight. Protector Bay hadn't even seen what had just happened and continued flying towards the horizon. End of chapter 90. Hope you guys enjoy the chapters, and a thumbs up is appreciated.